Hey y'all, hey y'all, hey y'all, what? Hey y'all, hey hey y'all. Woo! Mm,
I don't
that's
know if
an
it's getting any of
after
that music.
acknowledgement for y'all.
I'm jamming with you, but I don't think I don't. We're not hearing that music. So
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another roundtable, anti-racism in action roundtable, y'all. I am your host, the hostess with the mostest. Welcome, welcome. I see you out there in YouTube land. I see you on Twitter. Welcome to the space. We will give folks a minute or two to come into the space. In the meantime, I tell you what, they can try to take away our this, that, and the third, but what they will not take away is our joy. And so, with that, I just want us to sort of relax into the Afro rhythms of the moment as we wait for our siblings to join us in this space. So, with that, wherever you are, I don't care if you're in the bed, if you're in the living room, if you are in the grocery store, if you are in school, if you're by the patient's bedside, baby. I want you to move something, a body part. It don't matter your finger or your booty, but you move something with joy, baby, because that is our resistance and our revolution. All right. So let's go ahead with that movement today. Yes. Ah, come on in, come on in. I see you, Dr. Valdez. Yes, Dr. Hudson. Thank you for being here, Dr. Valdez. Thank you. I see you, Dr. McDade, in the house. Sister LaShawn in the building. Sister Lulu, I see you. Red Side, everybody. Thank you for being here in the space. Yes. We'll get started in a minute. See who else comes into the room. That's right, sis. You better break it down as we get started and open up the roundtable. Thank you all for being here and shout out to all you all taking time out on your Saturday for being here. It is just my pleasure. This I look forward to this now on a bi-weekly frequency, from the weekly to the bi-weekly, and just really, I don't know, there's something in my spirit that is really extra excited for the topic we have on today. So just as a matter of housekeeping and level setting, let me go ahead and introduce me to you. I am your hostess with the mostest, Dr. Ijeoma Nodim Opara, pronouns she, her, and all, meaning they in Igbo, my mother tongue. And I am calling in from the original unceded lands of the Anishinaabe, the Three Fires people, Ojibwe, Odawa, and Botawa Tomi, in the territory of Awiatanong, otherwise known as Detroit 313. I also recognize and honor my Igbo, African, and African diaspora ancestors, communities, and descendants in this moment. You already know that I'm a physician, scholar, scientist, artist, activist, coach, consultant, speaker, mama, wifey, and now cat mama as well. Shout out to Midnight T'Challa Opara out there meowing, living her best life. And my personal, professional, and business mission in life is to dismantle white supremacist delusion, aka white violence, aka white terrorism, by eliminating anti Blackness from medicine, healthcare, public health, and the sciences, all while centering and celebrating Black brilliance, Black abundance, Black joy, Black magic locally and globally. So again, thank you for being here at the Roundtable Anti-Racism in Action Roundtable. We are multi-professional, transdisciplinary, meaning that we cut across all sectors, disciplines, professions, and backgrounds. Community of unapologetically Black, pro-Black, libertary, pan-African, Afrocentric, Afro-optimists. And that means that we center and celebrate Black magic, brilliance, excellence, truth, joy, strengths, assets, abundance, possibilities, creativity, and future dreaming. We are indeed committed to developing the innovative knowledge, skills, and attitudes to inform transformative actions towards eliminating anti-Black racism in medicine, healthcare, public health, and the sciences. We are built on the foundation of Ubuntu, meaning community. I am because we are. And so we focus on building community in order to build power, to influence individual and institutional practice, policy, behavior, in order to move the needle. We meet here on Twitter Space and on YouTube, as well as Twitter Live, and it's the StreamYard, so it broadcasts widely on the various platforms. And we are just really proud to always shout out our partnerships, and they are plethoric. Okay, so some housekeeping before we jump in with our fabulous co-host on today. Okay, is one, pay attention to the jumbotron, and I will do the best I can until I get some assistance. Okay, for a production assistant to load things up on YouTube as well. But I'll do the best I can to make sure I'm doing that on YouTube. But on pay attention to the jumbotron, or the dashboard of the nest, as I've heard it being described here on Twitter Space. Two resources. Feel free to visit our YouTube channel if you want to see us, but we're also on the Twitter Live, so you can see our beautiful faces on there, and our website, and sign up for our listserv as well. I'll put all those links on the jumbotron. Be sure to tweet out the gems and resources that will be dropped on today's conversation. This is a roundtable. You can look at it as around the baobab tree in the village community meeting. So you all will have your voice, be prepared from the beginning, have your thoughts. We want to hear from you as well. You can do that by coming on to speak, but you can also in YouTube, you can put it in the comments. In Twitter, you can come up to speak, and you can also tweet out and use the hashtag AIART. A little I-A-R-T, because we ain't AI, honey. Or we are the original AI, meaning ancestral intelligence. Yours, yours, yours. And so with that being said, A, big A, little I, big A-R-T, Anti-Racism in Action Roundtable, tweet it out, get it to trend, baby, okay? And of course, you can share your resources, share the things you all are doing, share your celebrations, your achievements. We want to shout you out and celebrate you. Baby, we celebrate on this round table here. This is our point of joy, because joy is resistance, okay? Joy is revolution. So we want to celebrate what the brothers and sisters and siblings are doing, baby, for the culture, as we like to say. And if you have resources you want to share, go ahead and share that as well. We'll put it on the jumbotron. So I think that covers about it. That covers about it. And so with that in mind, let us jump into it. I see you, brother Freddie. Shout you out. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, use your emojis and emoticons, baby. We love the fist over here. We love the 100. So feel free to, as you hearing things that are sweet in your spirit, be sure to shout it out. Be sure to lift it up. Okay, like use those emojis like unapologetically and super liberally. Absolutely. And so with that in mind, let's get into it. We are here asking the questions. What do affinity groups or racial affinity group caucuses and caucusing, what does that have to do with our mental health? May is Mental Health Awareness Month. It's also AAPI Culture Month, National AAPI. So shout out to our AAPI siblings doing the do. We celebrate with you, solidarity and all that. Um, but as we internalize mental health and our collective mental health as Black peoples, all right, people of the diaspora, um, what role does racial affinity group caucusing serve in that? And the birthplace of that question was in an article that was published in your favorite periodical, the Daily Beast, I believe they're called, but I will pull it up to make sure I'm giving the right information. Um, and there was an article that came out that responded to a publication in the New England Journal of Medicine, the one and only New England Journal of Medicine, baby. And this article was expressing the ire of these first do no harm folks. I'm not going to call this man's name. You can read the article and know for yourself. I try not to give free publicity to, I'm not going to say enemies, but I would say the opposition. How about that? Is that more loving term maybe? Okay. The opposition. But you can read the article and know the names and places and dates and all of that. And these folks were denouncing the NEJM and rendering them as segregationist and a segregationist organization and doing illegal things, violating federal law, honey, by publishing this article by, first of all, brilliant, right, authors. Like, shout out to UCSF, University of California, San Francisco, for doing the damn thing and for being courageous in all spaces and just being a leader in anti-racism education, in health professions education, specifically medical education, right? And so shout out to all them leaders doing the thing that they do, and then writing about it. And shout out to the NEJM for going ahead and publishing it as they should, and all the great points that were made, which we will cover. But these right-wing conservative folks, these Clan MD folks, had an issue and said that NEJM, by publishing this article on racial affinity group caucusing as a pedagogical approach to medical education, espousing and moving and promoting this approach, was promoting segregation and violating federal law. And so there is so much inside of that. And so we are going to unpack that today. What are affinity groups? What are RAPCs, as the paper referred to? And I'll be putting that on the Jumbotron in a bit. What are they? What role do they serve in the spaces that they are utilized? Why are they important? Why has it drawn the ire of right-wing conservative white supremacist groups, frankly? And where do we go from here? You know, how do we move forward? Why are they critical to our mental health? What role do they play? And we are founded on Ubuntu. I am because we are community. I'm not going to unpack this on myself. Are you kidding? Who does that? I can only do this with the help and support of fantastic, brilliant geniuses. And I have 3 with me today. And of course, the support of the biggest brain of all, the community brain, which is all of you out there contributing, lending feedback, sharing your wisdom and your struggles, right? This is not clean. No, all these things are textured and nuanced, right? And so unpacking and helping us do the necessary deep dive of it all. And so it is my pleasure to bring to the moment the one, the only, soon to be Dr. Benny in the building, who is out here just transforming Tennessee all by his lonesome, just like doing the do in the Tennessee. Brilliant medical student, future doctor, who is head and shoulders above, so not just his peers, but even his seniors. Okay, advanced beyond advanced. We know this degree is just a formality, baby. You have been graduated in spiritually, shall we say. And so I am so proud to call this brother my friend, my brother, my colleague, my mentor in a lot of ways. He has really helped me in so many ways. And I just love him to death. And so, Brother Benny, go ahead and tell the people more about your background, just a minute or so, a few seconds of the brilliance. It try to encapsulate all the gloriousness you are in 30 seconds or less, because that's what we do. And let the people know why you are fantastic and beyond.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for having me, and excited for another week of AR. My name is Benias Isaias. I am a brother. I'm a
Don't
community.
forget to unmute on. Okay, you are muted on both. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. Go ahead, love.
there we go. So yeah, so I am. My name is Benias Isaias. I'm a brother, community educator. I'm an organizer. I attended Amherst College. I'm originally from Ethiopia, so shout out to the diaspora. Uh, um, Graduated from Amherst College with neuroscience degree, and using that, I'm now working in mental health space. I have co-founded an organization called Black Mental Health Village, and we're a health justice and community-based mental health organization, fighting to increase access to health care and to mental health, and healing services for our community. So we're doing the work in Nashville. We are excited to have great partners like you, Dr. Ijeoma and Amart, so we can really spread, the message of health justice and get people to understand the violence that is happening through these systems. And we're definitely going to talk about the violence that's happening in the medical system as it relates to what they are trying to teach us or what they're trying to prevent us from learning, right? But I'm just amazing to be here, and I'm excited to pass it on to the amazing uh, Dr. Nisi Hudson from Hood Medicine.
Welcome, brother. Thank you so much. And yes, I appreciate that. Now, Dr. Hudson is she is the fire that sets off other fires, baby. Okay, this woman does it all, and is just everything. Passionate, full of genius and brilliance as a scientist, as a scholar, and as a badass grassroots organizer, just doing the do. And so, Sister Nisi, as co-founder of Hood Medicine and all things great, go ahead and share a little bit of your brilliance there.
Hey, thanks for having me. Like have the plague right now, but yeah, I'm a computational biologist. I have my bachelor's in biology and interdisciplinary PhD from the University of Louisville, and my assistant mathematics. I am one of the co-founders of Good Medicine, which is a nonprofit public health collective pushing scientists and hackers and other sort of geeks who are dedicated to like health disparities research and public health advocacy for minority patient populations. And we are a partner of Dr. Apara's group and Benny's group as well. So we're like the triumvirate here, trying to do what we can to fight racism and lifestyle and also health policy as well. And so I'm really happy to be here. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Nisi. Dr. Nisi, and this is what family does. Despite not feeling very well, she is here present, and we're just so appreciative of it. So thank you. It is with my pleasure and honor that I bring Dr. Ana Maria Valdez to the floor. This firebrand of anti-racism in nursing cannot be messed with. Okay, she absolutely tears the floor up on Twitter for sure. I've learned a lot from her as it relates to nursing and this work, health justice work in nursing. And she, when we shared these articles, gave a brilliant critique of it. And I just had to have her on the roundtable to share and break it down further for the folks who just need a little bit of support in the understanding. And so, Dr. Valdez, go ahead and let the people know the brilliance that you are, and then we'll go from there. Dr. Valdez, you might need to unmute. Oh, you're on listener. Okay, here. I sent you a co-host invite. Can you come up? Let me see if you're messaging me anything on the DM. All right. So, Dr. Maria, let me know if you're having any issues. Just DM me, or yeah, DM me if you have any issues coming on, because you were a co-host a second ago. Or let's see, let me do a speaker. Okay. So you request to speak. I also sent you an invite. So either way, we will meet each other at some point, because the devil is a liar. Okay, so with that being said, while we're waiting for our wonderful sister to come on the stage, let's get into it. Dr. Nisi, we'll start with you and walk our way backwards. Did you get a chance to read either of the articles?
I did.
Yeah, so let's go ahead. I know we always try to start with our joy. Just take like a second, just talk about, I know, like, I don't know how you find the joy in the middle of fighting of the plague, like you said, but if there is a way, if you could just share a touch of that, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of these articles. And y'all, I have posted the links to the Jumbotron, and then I forgot that we have this thread that goes with the space, and so I'm going to put it on the space as well, the thread and all that as well, so you all can open it up if you haven't had a chance to look at them. So what's a joy moment for you, and then we'll get into it.
Sure. I guess, I don't know right now. I mean, I'm happy I can read.
I accidentally closed the, let's get it on again. That was, I don't know what happens too much. Let me open this up.
Because
reconnect to space.
honestly,
Yes.
I think it's difficult with not just in medicine, but a lot of other professions where people kind of take for granted that, you know, it's one of the professions that we kind of hold high in regard as, like, you know, our heroes, like firemen and policemen and nurses. And it's like, yeah, but not everyone who practices is a hero to their community, you know, like, just like everyone else. In life, you take your whole self to work, and sometimes your whole self is a racist. And it's really difficult, I think, with the legacy of racism in medicine, sometimes just to get the gatekeepers in the profession and the education system to admit that there is so much bias inherently, not just from people's personal biases, but also just from the legacy of unethical human experimentation and race, biology, and all of the things that still permeate doctors' approach and concepts about patients of color. And so I think this is an important topic in a couple of ways, because, you know, I think for myself, I'm not a physician, I'm a scientist, but certainly, you know, going to like an Ivy League school and sort of being a professional student, there are a lot of times where you feel isolated, and you do tend to try to, you know, congregate with people of your similar backgrounds to try to make it through. There's a lot of imposter syndrome, all that kind of stuff. And I think I really love the approach at MIT because, excuse me, we've always had a policy of sort of, I don't know, choice maybe. And it's always, because of that, been a very self-segregating place. So a lot of like the living communities, will have distinct, you know, groups, and people will be separated by either their culture or interests or whatever. And initially, I was taken back by that, but then I realized what a blessing and a joy it was that everyone in my dorm was Black, because it created the support that you don't realize that you need until you really get into the thick of things.
Right.
And that was, to me, one of my favorite things about being there. Excuse me, because I feel like they understood that the the education process there is so grueling and so taxing that you need to have a place where you feel at home when you go back to your dorm at night or go back with your groups. And we are creatures of, we're like any other animal where we have emergent behaviors, and we, congregate in our like groups. And it's like, I think for us, that was something that really helped us. And also we built lifelong friendships that way too. We still, like, half the people that founded Hood Medicine are my MIT alumni friends. So it's like, I think there's a lot of sound reason and rationale behind that. The only thing that I do wonder, because there aren't a lot of institutions like MIT where people have such a raw passion for teaching and tend to not let a lot of their own prejudices taint that process, I'll say. I think it's very different probably in medical school, because even though I think the affinity groups are good practice, I do wonder if there are enough of those like teachers and gatekeepers and people to like steer those groups, people that they can be mentored by that come from their same backgrounds. And I also wonder if there are affinity groups where they're separating, the white people. Are they really getting that anti-racism kind of foundational teaching? Are they being challenged, or is it just a way to like coddle them? So that's something I wonder about the execution of it, but I think it's good in practice in general.
I love that. And I think we're going to definitely come back to this thought and what I'm hearing. Thank you, Dr. Hudson. And I see that Dr. Valdez is finally on. We'll come to you in a second. I heard a lot in there. I heard about, first of all, really lifting up the value of these of affinity groups, and how they work. And, for just to level set to ensure that we are on the same page when we talk about racial affinity groups or racial affinity group caucusing. Racial affinity, let's just set some definitions. Racial affinity group caucusing are facilitated sessions involving participants grouped according to self-identified racial or ethnic identities to support the integration of anti-racism curricula into clinical practice. Okay. And it's used often as part of a broader anti-racism and anti-oppression curriculum. And so it engages participants in critical introspection through the lens of their own racialized experience, and enhances learning by building community and encouraging praxis, which is the integration of theory, self-reflection, and action. All right. And so that's when we talk about racial affinity group and racial affinity group caucusing, this is what we mean. And I derived that definition from one of the reference, actually the key reference article in the NEJM, the New England Journal of Medicine, Racial Affinity Group Caucusing in Medical Education, a key supplement to anti-racism curricula. The link again is where it's posted on the Jumbotron dashboard and the thread for the room. And so I want to level set in case anyone is like, well, what are they talking about? Okay. And so as Dr. Hudson was speaking, in MIT apparently was a great example where that was the case, and folks were able to come together around a shared identity of Blackness to support inside of a predominantly white space that has its challenges. And we're going to talk about that as one of the root causes of, or the root sort of the premise, foundational faulty premises, I would say, of the critique, the article that was published in response in this like totally non-credible outlet in response to the NEJM article. But again, this on not understanding how toxic whiteness is in these spaces and the ways, and this NEJM paper makes another great point around that. The very medical education pedagogy, the very way that medical education is structured and has been structured and is carried out over time, is itself rooted in these systems of oppression and systemic oppression, and is often violent and re-traumatizing for those of us from minoritized and marginalized backgrounds or identities. There needs to be a whole new creation of space in order for the fullness, and like Dr. Hudson said, the fullness of and totality of our humanity to be expressed as part of the ways that we engage belonging and therefore success in these spaces, and of course a fullness of health and well-being. So I just really love that, and I reflect on my own experience at the University of Michigan, and you couldn't have told me that I wasn't living a different world life. Y'all remember A Different World, the show? It's a different world from where you come from. I don't know how young y'all are, but that was the show for Black folks, with Whitney and then it's Whitney and all that. And that was a lot of us, our vision for college, right? It was like, yes, we're going to be at HBCU and everything. I didn't go to HBCU, but I lived the HBCU like life. Of course, I'm sure it didn't touch what an actual HBCU experience would have been like, of course. However, we did the best we could at the U of M to get close to it. And that, I will have to tell you, I attribute that my success in college a lot to that. That actually carried on to medical school and residency. Even at medical school in Wayne State. Wayne State is located in Detroit. 80-something% Black, but the school itself is a predominantly white institution. Okay, facts upon facts upon facts. But we were able, I was really blessed that we had a good handful of us, especially as part of the Black Medical Association, that we were able to, again, create our affinity group, informal affinity group, and that helped all of us to succeed, most of us anyway, to succeed in a very challenging experience. That carried on to MedPeds residency program, again, having a Black PD and Filipino APD, and like 75% of our class was Black and or of color. I'm telling you, that I have to say, I attribute majorly my success, professional success, to being around my folks that were a huge protection for me against the toxicity and violence of whiteness. And that is just facts upon facts. So Dr. Hudson, you outlined it and you laid some questions that we're going to get into, but let's quickly pivot to the wonderful Dr. Valdez and hear from her. And Dr. Valdez, if you could, again, sort of, we did a general overview of you, but if you could share some more about your background, why you do this work, how you came to this work, what you do inside of justice, anti-racism work in nursing. Shout out to nursing. Shout out. My husband just passed his final exam. He has joined the nursing family, and I'm really excited about that. And so go ahead and let the people know the brilliance that you are, Dr. Valdez, and then we will get into your brilliant critique and just unpack that. And y'all, I will put that also on the Jumbotron. Go ahead, Dr. Valdez. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me to be here. And can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And congratulations to Mr. Opara. I could not be happier to have him joining us in nursing.
Yay, thank you.
My background is I'm a professor of nursing. I am a journal editor. I am a writer and a scientist. I research anti-racism and bias in nursing. And I am also an activist, and most importantly, I am the daughter of a Black woman. I am the wife of a Black man. I have multiracial children, and anti-racism and particularly anti-Blackness is very important to me. I'm deeply committed to doing this type of work. And so, I appreciate you recognizing that I speak out, and I speak out truthfully in the spaces that I can. And I'm just really grateful and appreciative to be here in this community of incredible people having this very important discussion about how we protect the mental health of Black folks, particularly in healthcare, learning environments, medical school, nursing school, where they so often have to be code switching all the time, can't bring their authentic self to school, are facing daily violence and harm from racist and white supremacist ideologies and the weaponization of professionalism, and having to constantly be in that environment and also be trying to learn really complex and concepts in a very rigorous type of learning environment. And so I have support for affinity groups because I believe it's really important that there are safe spaces where folks can talk about what is going on authentically and not have to worry about judgment or power that's going to affect them in a negative way. In nursing, one of the things that's really concerning is oftentimes in schools, you can't even really have an affinity group because there's one Black student.
Mm-hmm.
The only,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so what spaces are available to be able to support those learners that are so desperately needed within our healthcare system, and that we often lose because of the daily violence that they have to experience. So I'm really appreciative that we're having this conversation. And I do want to shout out my friend, Dr. Sherika Miller, who is a nurse and a scholar and activist as well. And she's at CSU Fullerton. And she has a Black student nurses affinity group that she facilitates and moderates, and is going to be putting out an article very soon on the framework for that.
Oh, wow.
And so, I'm really appreciative of her work as well. She's found great success, and particularly around the mental health and the, feeling supported and not feeling alone. We look at the research about students, Latina and Black students in nursing schools, and they are often feeling isolated, excluded, unable to be themselves, not feeling like people care about them. And so while it would be great that we could all just feel that way without having to be in affinity groups, that's not our current situation, right? We're working on that, but it's going to be a long time because people are holding firm with the death group to their white supremacy. And in the meantime, we've got to create spaces where people can be safe and they can learn and they can be authentic.
Boom goes the mic. Boom goes the mic. As you dropped it on the floor, walked off, came back, dropped it again, and walked off. Thank you, Dr. Valdez, for that. Period. Now, we like to always make space for joy. Is there any joyful moments? And by the way, yes, shout out to sis, doing the damn thing over in nursing. Can't wait to read the paper. Yes, when we flood the literature space with this scholarship, we normalize it. Okay, then we normalize it. This is the evidence that we're building towards anti-racist practices and transformation of health professional education and practice and policy, because they're all interconnected. So shout out to sis doing the damn thing. Can't wait for the drop-in of that paper. Please make sure you share and tag AI Art in it. So with that being said, Dr. Valdez, any joyful moment you have to share before we go to Brother Benny?
Yes, absolutely. First and foremost, it was very joyful for me to hear about Mr. Opara and see a picture of him graduating. I just love seeing people who are going to have a health equity focus, and love seeing Black people in nursing, because I think that's so incredibly important for us to change health equity. So that was joyful for me. But also one thing that's really joyful for me is my daughter is a pre-nursing student. She's a full spectrum doula. She wants to do street medicine and is deeply committed to serving people who are lacking access and who face racism and harm. And she is doing really great. She's in her physiology class right now. The max points are 100 and she's got 127. So I'm really proud of my girl.
Oh, and we are proud of her too. Yes, daughter, you go ahead and you do the damn thing as only you do. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Brother Benny, what's your praise report? What's your joy report? And go ahead and just react freely to how you reacted, how you felt, how you reacted, what came up for you when you read the articles, and to anything that Dr. Valdez and Dr. Hudson has shared so far. Sorry, let me go ahead and mute.
All right. Thank you. So my praise report would be, I just had a lot of people reach out to me this week, asking me how they can support, and so it was nice. Just community in itself, right? Feeling wanted, feeling valued. People making the time out of their day. So that is my praise report. My village coming through like always. And besides that, my reaction to this article was I mean, clearly if we have that side angry that black students are getting support, we're doing something right. We talked about the disparities that exist with regards to health disparities in this country, and we know that having a more diverse workforce reduces these health disparities. But the whole MO of the organization that shall not be named is to get rid of programs that increase diversity in medicine. They're literally, going after different programming, like is it diversity in medicine kind of programming? Is it there was the Black Men in Medicine program, and they're calling out, sex-based and gender-based discrimination, and they're trying to prevent any formation of pipelines that introduce a more diverse workforce. In addition to that, they're also trying to ensure that the few people who are in, these spaces don't get the support that they need to thrive. And we know, organizations like Black Dog Village exist because Black residents are more likely to be kicked out from residency, right? We know that the institutions that exist already are doing their best to violently throw us out and to make sure that we are suffering while we're there. And so everything that I'm seeing is an extension of the violence of the dominant culture. And what they're trying to do is protect medicine. They're trying to protect medicine because they know that is where everything, that is how we value one humanity over another, right? And so ultimately, um, I'm just, at a loss for words that an organization like this exists and that they're getting this much traction and that they're causing this much harm to the very few programs that already exist to increase, the diversity in healthcare. And so this is very troubling, and we have to take a look at how we can combat the work that they're doing, because we do need more spaces for underserved communities, people who have been neglected, not underserved, neglected, right? And we need more spaces for us to come together to be able to hear out, what the issues are in our community, for us to actually value, the lived experiences that we have and understand that we have the common oppressor. And that's really what they're scared of. When we come in spaces like this, we start making the connections. Hey, this happened to me too. Hey, I've faced this kind of structural violence as well. And at some point, we're going to start pointing the finger at the culture that's creating, this and upholding this violence. And that's what they're really scared of. And what we have to do is, how can we, one, spread more of these kinds of programming to introduce, more introspection in medicine so that we can, combat the harm that occurs. But more so, we have to, really ask ourselves, why do they not want us to feel safe? Why do they not want us to belong? Right? What's the agenda?
That's the question. What are the critical questions we should ask for the folks that are pushing back? What is truly underneath it all? right? And that's where we're going to go in right now. It's a great segue to really unpacking with a critical lens what is underneath, what is the fear, right? What is the ultimate goal? What is the function of all of this, right? The language that is being used to critique this work calls these racial affinity groups segregationists, co-opting the language of civil rights and freedom fighters in service of oppression and violence is the highlight of caucasity. I mean, it's just the peak of caucasousness. I mean, how do you do this? I don't know. But how you literally take words out of freedom fighters, out of liberation fighters, out of movement artists and movement makers, and use it to found your oppressive ideology on is something I would never be able to wrap my mind around. But absolutely, what is the function of this? How does again, through the lens of interdependence, interconnection of all things, intersectionality, how does this connect to what's going on in Florida and Texas and many other places, the anti quote unquote CRT movement, the LGBTQ, anti-LGBTQIA movement, and all these pieces where we're codifying into law white comfort, right? DeSantis's attack on American history that codifies white comfort. Literally, you cannot say anything that will make white kids uncomfortable. Like, read the bill. Read the freaking bill. It's law now, the law. And so what does it mean when white comfort is so fragile, and not fragile like a flower, but fragile like a bomb, because it is indeed a weapon of mass destruction, whereby when having these conversations with them is a problem. When you don't want to have it with them, it is also a problem. So the issue is don't have it at all. Don't have it at all. And then it is called divisive when you name ongoing de facto division, right? The fact that healthcare delivery and practice and experience is already de facto segregated, aka Medicaid, right? With and the uninsured and underinsured and everything that's going down now, with a lot of the rollback of protective safety net policies that were deployed under COVID, and with the plan, the emergency plan, and all those going back, a lot of these things are being rolled back. So when I tell people that progress is not linear, it is not linear. It requires vigilance, on and on and on, and constant pushing and making noise and all this good stuff. Anyway, we'll get to that in a second. And so we are seeing that ultimately there is this push. It's part of an overall, Brother Benny, you're painting for us. This is not an isolated issue. It is connected to all the movements we're seeing that is in retaliation to anything that looks like Black folks being, like, essentially being treated as or attaining full human rights ultimately. And so anything that even begins to look like that is couched as, well, is a threat to my position of power, and therefore shut it the frick down, right? And so really beginning, I want us to really unpack this, and to do that, I want to read the wonderful Dr. Valdez's offering in response to the Twitter conversation, the thread that was started. And she says, intentional. I believe I've put this up in the Jumbotron. I believe I have. If not, I'll put it again. And then I'll also put it in the thread. So let me get that copy going, link. So intentional affinity groups, not segregated learning, are being proposed because people who are not part of the dominant group are actively being harmed in educational settings and practices. And Dr. Miller discusses this as an action to provide safe spaces for discussion and growth. And then she also says, evidence is mixed on how effective they are because they haven't really been studied, right? But personally, I find having safe spaces, courageous spaces that I can be my authentic self and speak freely very helpful. Absolutely. And that is reflected in the article, the NEJM article. This approach is being proposed because racism, white supremacism, and oppression are alive and thriving in healthcare, education, and practice. And I think that's the point. right? It's like we want to pretend that there's a reason there was no diversity in the first place. These are not like passive, like sort of happenings. We have low diversity like this, like that, the way the rain just falls from the sky. That's how we have just low diversity. Just this passive thing that just no, there is active exclusion of groups of people from these spaces, right? The lack of diversity is not a passive reality. It is an active result of active rampant whiteness unchecked, period, and toxic to the rest of us, because that is the design of these spaces rooted in history ongoing currently. Dr. Valdez mentions that affinity groups are a band-aid. If we stopped centering whiteness and ended white supremacist ideologies and systems, they will not be needed. The idea that these are a response to something. They didn't just stand up and say, oh, Black people, we need to sit on this side of the cafeteria, white people sit over there, and everybody else sits over there. But that it is a response to an active system of segregation that already exists. There is de facto segregation, for real, that is ongoing currently, that is rooted in benefits maintained by and maintains a system of white supremacism currently in these spaces. Affinity groups are a response to that. And the moral abhorrence that the response article quotes should be against that. That should be what should be triggering their anger and ire, right? Not the response of people that are trying to survive and thrive in these spaces. And so she says, if you don't want affinity groups, then dig into the anti-racist work and demand to end white supremacist ideology and systemic harm. That's the answer. That's the answer. We have de facto segregation already going on. We have less than 5% of the nation's physicians are Black, and the numbers are dwindling because there's this hemorrhaging of Black physicians and Black healthcare professionals from the field because of the toxic whiteness and intersectional systems of violence that exist in our spaces, right? We have less than 2% that are Black women, less than that Black men. It is not by accident. That is the messaging we need to say. And this is where I shake our DEI people. You have to name these things. Otherwise, your interventions are impotent. They are pretty, they are cute, but they are impotent because they are not naming the root cause of why we ended up in this place in the first place. If you don't name it, how do you move forward? And then that goes to, again, Dr. Hudson's point around, well, what would these spaces look like if we don't even have enough facilitators, right, to facilitate? You don't even have enough Black faculty to facilitate, or faculty of color to facilitate the affinity groups of color, or how will I say, critically conscious white facilitators to facilitate white spaces. Where are we with that? Because again, of the de facto segregationist context that we currently exist in. So I want to bring that question back to you, Dr. Valdez, especially since I've been quoting you so far and you are here to speak for yourself too. Is there anything that I misinterpreted in what you offered? And how do you speak to that, Dr. Hudson's question, in the context of all these pieces I just outlined?
Thank you, Dr. Opera. When I was listening to Dr. Hudson and she started talking about the white affinity groups, it really resonated with me because last night, I'll just say for the folks that are listening, this is going to come off as biased, and that's okay because that's where I'm at right now, right? But the first thing when I started reading that, I thought, what is the white group going to do? Right? Like, how is that group going to actually push things forward? And to your point, I think it's very important that whoever would be facilitating or moderating that group has to really understand anti-racism and has to be willing and committed to leading folks through those discussions. I think, there's potentially some benefit in that people who identify as white, there may be people in there who really want to do the right thing, want to progress, but sometimes they're afraid of saying the wrong thing. My father is white, and sometimes, even though he has been a part of a Black family for, my lifetime, sometimes he's still afraid to say the wrong thing. So potentially, if they had the right facilitator, some good could happen at that. I don't have a lot of confidence that that's going to happen, but we can hope. And I really wanted to speak on what Brother Benny shared. I really like what you're talking about why is this happening. And one thing that I just have to say really clearly is they are scared. They are terrified. Gen Z is scaring them. It's making a huge impact, and that is why they are doing all of these rollbacks on human rights, banning books. They don't want their children to learn about how they are engaged in a white supremacist ideology and systems and how they oppress other people, because their children are going to go, wait, no, I don't want to be part of that. Right? And so they are terrified. And it's important for us to recognize that they're terrified. That's why all these laws are coming forward, because what that means for us is we have to fight harder right now. We have to push harder because they're afraid. They don't want Black people to have power. They're afraid of having affinity groups because they don't want Black people in these medical schools or nursing schools to be successful. They got to open up the door, right? But they don't have to make you have opportunities and really be able to thrive within those programs. So while we see, I think that people get distracted because we're fighting back on these human rights things, which is very important. But at the core, they are terrified. So let's keep going. Let's push harder and break through, because we have to break through this. And I think it's possible. I don't know if it'll be possible in the near term, but it is possible if we keep fighting and pushing hard.
Oh, it is possible. I refuse to believe otherwise, baby. I'm here because I will see change in my lifetime, and I've seen a little bit locally, and it's traveling. I'm in this work to see what I can see while I'm here. Liz, I am here for the radical optimism and radical hopefulness of my grandmothers, because if they didn't believe it, I wouldn't be here. All right. And so I am here. It is possible, sis, and we will make it possible. Guess what? It's possible because we make it possible. It's possible because we do our part to make it possible. Now, I want to shout out community. You're coming up. Definitely put up your hands to speak. No nonsense. You already heard all our intro and the space we are. My block hand is like, it's trigger happy. It's with the quickness it moves. We are here to build community and build power. It's okay to disagree. Like, absolutely. This is how we grow, but we do it with respect. We do it with love. We do it with kindness, and we do it with a sense of centering Black awesomeness and Blackness. Okay. Because that's why right now, yeah. So just keep that in mind. So definitely this is a great time to request to speak and put up your hands when you're willing. We're going to make one more round among the speakers here, and then we will open up to you. So definitely do that, and we'll go in that order. So I want to shout out Red Sky, shout out Eric Taylor, shout out Sister Yarabel. Appreciate you. And please come up, all of you amazing people. I see you here. Shout out. Love that you're here. All right, let's go to Dr. Hudson, the one and the only. I've been giving her a little bit of rest because, she is here despite having the plague, as she says. I love whenever she says that. And, but we are lifting her up in love and healing. We're not going to keep her too long to make sure she gets her rest and doing all the things she needs to do. But, Sister Nisi, you've been hearing everyone and what they've said. I also want to read out some of the amazing responses to the thread. When I put up the thread, and again, y'all, it's in your jumbotron and in the thread for this room. Dr. Fleming says the headline and coverage are conservative right-wing distortions. The article is a strong critique of white supremacism within education and advocates for affinity group caucusing as part of anti-racist curricula. We have another Miss Lee that says 100%. The org behind this is using Orwellian quote unquote logic to uphold white supremacism, racism in medicine, and destroy affirmative action, gender affirming care, and more through lawsuits, legislative advocacy, press, etc., horrifying and supported by institutions claiming to do anti-racist work. Yup. And so you hear that right there. Brother, I love Neo, but Agent Smith was right all along. I love this brother. Says, I read the article. It has many merits akin to HBCUs. I agree. Affinity groups got me through my undergrad at a PWI. That's what we all said here. Not necessarily all classes, but a formal cohort will work wonders for retention and graduation. Let the haters huff. Yes, baby. Let the haters hate. BK Tikanji says, in my humble opinion, an opt-in racial affinity group is far from segregation and may actually have a role in helping BIPOC find peers and mentors with a shared lived experience and provide a protected space within institutions from the white gaze. Sister Robin says, oh, Lord Jesus, what a thing to wake up to. We're going back to the 60s, protecting the crocodile tears of white supremacy, disguising it as caring about the sensitivity and experiences of Black folks. Nope, nope, not. All right. And so much. So I want you to just check in. Of course, Sister Dr. Monica McLemore released an Instagram video that Dr. Valdez posted, and it's somewhere in the thread that's been posted to the space that you can watch, where she breaks things down as well. I'll end on Dr. Maurice Shola's thought. It is always a full gaslight when meaningful and evidence-based approaches to a challenging topic run into the buzzsaw of defending the status quo. The proposed approach centers the reality, y'all. We have different realities that different groups with different life experiences need different work. And that's why the article talks about differentiation in learning and pedagogical approaches, the reality of it. The reality, y'all. The reality. And the reality is that whiteness has a tendency to take over. I remember Dr. Hudson, I remember participating in what was trying to be an affinity group, a racial affinity group for faculty of color at my institution. We had this wonderful time. I forget, let's say it was 2 hours long or so, like an hour and some minutes. It was just a wonderful experience. And then a white lady walks in. And for the rest of the time, she made an offering that took like 20 minutes for her to say. Nobody interrupted her. She started crying. There was a lot of things happening. And the rest of the time was spent focusing on the needs of this woman and comforting her and dealing with her. And I was so pissed. The only reason I didn't walk away is because I needed to talk to someone after the event and needed some things to be, to address some things. So otherwise I was just going to pack my shit and get out, just bad lady it, take my bags and out. But the whole time, and I watched. The other thing was that it was great learning for me because I observed the way white womanhood took over the space and then observed my people fall into historical roles of caretaking of whiteness. You know what I'm saying? And without a critical lens and a critical consciousness, we just do these things. It's normalized, right? This is how we're socialized for centuries, y'all. When no shame, no blame. I don't, because I understand how socialization works. And so there was just we just fell into these roles. There is something automatic that happens inside of when whiteness is in the room and everybody just kind of like plays their role. I have watched and participated in spaces where I know what this brother really thinks. We say the opposite, right? And that's why when white folks, and listen, the next white person that come up to me talking on behalf of their Black friend or their African friend or their Nigerian friend is going to taste how my big toe really tastes like, honestly, right? If you're going to come up to me and say, well, your Nigerian friend lied to you. I'm going to tell you right now, let me just dispel that myth. I'm sorry to reveal secrets, but your Nigerian friend lied. What they said to you is not what we say with each other. They are not safe with you. I don't care you've been friends for 50 years. That is not the truth. They just told you. And so don't come interpret our truth to me because your Black friend, your Nigerian friend, your African friend, your Jamaican friend, don't do that. Please not, because that was a lie. You trying to support something opposed and you come to, well, my Black friend said, your Black boy, I don't care if it's your boyfriend, your wife, your husband, it don't matter. They lied. That's not the truth, because when we're together, we know what we say. And to your point, Brother Benny, and also Sister Valdez, that's what they're scared of, right? Because whenever there's three of us that come together at work, we always look around and say, be careful now. Somebody's gonna walk by in a minute and be like, what y'all doing over there? They don't like y'all together. Because 3 Black people is a revolution. So, with that being said, Dr. Hudson, is there anything you would like to sort of respond to in what I've shared, what Dr. Valdez shared? Do you have thoughts about, this idea that you raised beautifully? If there's not enough of us already because of de facto segregation and exclusion, um, what is the true quality or value of these affinity spaces when we may or may not have enough qualified facilitators in the first place, particularly in the white spaces, but truly in all the spaces. But what else comes up for you? And then we will move to the audience. And audience, I also want you to think about how your comment speaks to our mental health, and I want us to integrate some freedom dreaming as well. All right, Sister Hudson.
Well, I guess firstly I'd say that's the danger sometimes when we share these spaces with white people in the hopes that there being some sort of reconciliation. If I was them, I would want to burn all the books too. Honestly, I wouldn't want to write on my legacy about books. I don't fall for that. I would cry all the time too when I can't hear how Black people felt about them. So I get it, but I challenge you to watch how fast those tears dry up. If you challenge them on that, I don't think half the time it's all that genuine.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's an important distinction because with the affinity groups, the purpose that they serve is to create safe spaces for minority groups and learners.
Mm-hmm.
Because of how combative being in this space usually be realized with it. But I don't know that in the time that we live right now, that white people are ready to do the work that an affinity group would require them to be truly impactful. I think it's hard enough with them trying to erase the entire history of slavery in America behind genocide, that if we can't even get people to admit that slavery wasn't like the help, we weren't just in the house making fried chicken, it was just prolonged torture for centuries. And torture at their pleasure, to be clear, they derive pleasure from torturing us in many ways. And we have sort of, I think in some ways we have not confronted that legacy in the way that we should, especially where it comes to medicine, because much of the modern techniques in medicine that we have today, especially where surgery is concerned, all of that is because of how many enslaved Africans were experimented on during slavery. As a matter of fact, they advertised the schools in the South were able to draw more students to their medical schools because they had more anatomical material to work with because of the slaves. And we all know about the barbarous, father of modern gynecology. We know all of the stories, the TV, all that, but I don't think we understand, just like so many other things in our society, how insidious all of that has become, because doctors and scientists worked with lawmakers and policymakers so that the race science and the biology that they, ascribed to us as slaves justified the oppressive laws that they put into place against Black people for centuries. And that still permeates the way that doctors practice medicine today. That's why Black people don't get equitable chronic pain management treatment.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Black women die more often in childbirth with white doctors than with Black doctors. That's
Mm-hmm.
why our babies die. Because they have all of these antiquated notions, whether they're conscious about it or not,
Mm-hmm.
about our bodies and our physiology that are vestiges from slavery.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really hard to imagine a future where we reconcile that when we're throwing the fucking books out of the schools and burning them in elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not getting to college, medical school. I just feel like if we don't zoom out and look at society on the whole and where we're going right now, I feel like so many things will be lost in terms of our prospects for reconciliation, because it feels like, we're about to let them get away with murder again, and I think we owe it to our ancestors to push back, because they may not want to own their history, but the burden can't be on us.
Right. Right.
If this is your legacy, the blood is on your flag, it's on ours. And it starts with that, because if we can't even speak clearly and touch and agree on what slavery was, and it's really hard to touch and agree on how medicine has evolved to modern age. So I think that with these affinity groups, I mean, obviously for minority students, it's serve a good purpose, but if we can't even get people to agree that they're racist in the grocery store, we definitely are going to get them to agree that they're racist in the exam room.
Mm-hmm.
So that there's a disconnect there and how we begin to build like racial equity into medical education.
Mm-hmm.
You have to start with acknowledging what the fuck is wrong with it in the first place.
Right.
And how all of the behaviors and the things that people have learned over these centuries impact morbidity and mortality of our patient population.
Right.
Period. We can't talk about it. We might as well burn all the books.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And as if right on cue, Brother Benny posted, and I put it on the Jumbotron and in the thread, a post by the Dr. Uche Blackstock, where she writes, and I quote, "Today I broke down on a Zoom call. As I quoted this study, tears started pouring. If 5 of the historically Black medical schools closed by the 1910 Flexner report had remained open, they would have collectively trained approximately 35,000 Black physicians by 2019. And when you think about that, and you think about the recent study that just came out, that Black folks live longer if there's just at least one Black physician in your neighborhood, in the community. That presence was associated with longevity for Black folks. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that unbelievable? Think about the lives lost. But to your point, right? Exactly. We cannot and I say this oftentimes, we cannot have equity until we have justice. And we can't have justice until we tell the truth. Period. Health equity, wealth equity begins with truth telling. That's what then informs justice, which then informs the result of equity. You cannot do these things without starting the truth. And the truth starts with confrontation of the legacy that builds and continues to inform current modern day practices.
And not only that, but if you're thinking about like future medicine, AI and digital tech, building an environment into all of these new technology that could be revolutionary, but maybe won't be if we don't address it now before we start implementing it.
Sis, you just opened up another, and we're going to have a conversation on that alone. That's its own roundtable, because absolutely that right there is, yes, Absolutely. And so Ibram X. Kendi says denial is the heartbeat of racism, right? But what is the heartbeat of anti-racism? Confession, confession, truth telling. Absolutely. And so we're going to move. Thank you, Dr. Hudson. I mean, just really for opening all of that for us to think about. We're going to move to the audience. I'll tell you about the order. And I would just say, as we contend, and so we're going to be massaging the mental health pieces. We've mentioned it threaded throughout the conversation, right? But what are the mental health repercussions or impacts or consequences of this? But then also, as we begin to freedom dream, to how we protect these spaces and how we grow from these spaces, because as Dr. Valdez said, these are temporary. Really, they are in response to. But what does it mean to actually create? What are we truly moving towards? What are we truly building or creating from this? And really beginning to articulate that freedom dream. I would tell you that when I do talks to mixed groups, which is often who I talk to, is folks that it's a mixed racial or ethnic composition. I have integrated a disclaimer page just for us. And I talk about the fact that these topics are re-traumatizing for many folks in our community, right? Because as was said in the article, and let me see if I can find it to read to you in a second. And if not, I'll just read it to you later. But absolutely read it short. The New England Journal of Medicine article is short. It's very, very readable. I read it in minutes. But they do reference and talk about the fact that these experiences, right, are re-traumatizing, right? We are a people that are surviving multi-generational trauma and stress, right? That shows up in our bodies, in our minds, in our spirits in so many ways. We are needing to be in a constant state of healing, honestly, right? And so the truth of the matter is that when we attend these talks and the people are talking as if all of us are the same and we all are colonizers, it's very it can be problematic. Now, there's nuance and there are textures. There's certain privileges we hold within our community. We can unpack that safely. But in a mixed room, it gets very interesting fast, especially when we still exist in an unjust society that hasn't had that conversation, as Dr. Hudson has said. And so these things are better packed together when you are in a safe and brave space to not only talk about those privileges and the intersectionality and multiple hats that we wear and the ways we have also internalized and perpetuated these systems of violence in our practices, in our education, etc., right? And the work that we have done. We need those spaces to be able to do that. And when that's not present, it can be re-traumatizing as we engage with the material, knowing we or our family members have lived through that experience. Is not just academic. That's another disclaimer I usually say. Dr. Paras talk about this topic, whatever the topic might be, is not just academic and clinical. It is personal and it's a matter of life and death. You know this. There is no distance between me and this material. I'm living it every day. My brothers are living it. My sisters are living it. My siblings, my parents, my children, they are living it. My patients, who are also my brothers and sisters and siblings, are living it. So I'm not even going to be here and adopt a sort of Eurocentric, white supremacist colonialist mindset of distance between the material and subject of study. That's not a thing. Because in this case, it is my life. So here we go, right? And then to also name that for those of us that occupy certain identities, this material is going to hit differently. So this is how we could potentially take care of ourselves. I attended a talk where there was disclaimer, I'm going to discuss racism. Again, you know who was centered. You know exactly who was centered. I couldn't believe it. And that's when I was like, I decided, no, I'm going to name who actually should be centered in these conversations and whose feelings or experiences we should actually be protecting, which is those of us that are still surviving this system of oppression. So with that being said, let's go ahead to I'll read out the audience stuff later so that we can hear from y'all that have taken the time to be here. Let's start with Red Sky, and then we'll go to Brother Eric Taylor, Sister Yarabel, and Sister Ann. Red Sky, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for this space. I can't believe that I just happened on it, I guess because I'm following you, Doctor, but So just for context, I was recently a student. I'm a clinician in allied health right now. As a student, a group of BIPOC students, we started, which I didn't know that it was called as an affinity group just for ourselves. And it came out of that need just because there's so many of our experiences and are actually to tie in with what you're talking about, our dream for a different vision of how healthcare could be, how it looked like to us. And we were just envisioning something different from our curriculum. For example, like there's so many things that we had to go to our profs about, and I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to discuss with each other first. And we would use, those that opportunity on Zoom to kind of text each other. Nobody could see us. So that's kind of like, we'd be like, what is she talking? What are they talking about? This doesn't make any sense. Calling the police on BIPOC folks during a mental health crisis, this is not right. Do they have any idea what they do to us? Things like that, or about like talking about certain groups and like particularly Indigenous groups where I live, about their education levels without examining that historical context and funding. Look in present day, but derived from very racist policies under. So like just knowing we just needed a different kind of education. So we just started it where we started our own group. We called in teachers that we wanted. So folks from sociology, community groups, organizers, etc., to come and teach us. We got some funding so that we could pay them, because we don't want just to take for take.
Yes.
We made sure to pay everybody like as much as we could. Of course, ourselves free. It was free. Like we're doing all this work for free. I'm not saying that's right, but we just had to do it to get it started. So we're still doing this. We're still providing education, trying to mentor students. I personally would love another student to take over what I'm doing right now. Right now, I'm still helping because they're so, as you know, like med school, allied health schools, so busy, and we just want to help them. I personally would love to bring in someone, a Black or Indigenous student in particular, who's passionate about this, and support them. Like I want to get them a full scholarship so they could do this kind of work. That, also good for me. It was good for my mental health. Speaking of mental health, I can't believe even doing this work, even though it was extra. I guess another perspective. I'm not saying it's right to do it for free, but it was good for me to be with these folks, listening to these folks, learning with them. It was really important for my mental health, and I think it got me through because there were so many things in the program that was really dispiriting, not too much racist, including racism from peers, like that we forced into group work, and they would use their mental health as an excuse for not doing that work. There's so much. Anyways, as a student, I don't want to take all your time, but I just wanted to share like that perspective, and I had no idea it was called affinity groups, and now I know. And I have so many other thoughts. Thank you for all of yours about like what it takes to provide educational content for different groups. And yes, it can be different. It's absolutely, because we're coming from that experience of being racialized. We're coming, and it's easier to see. Even if some folks are a little bit in that sunken place, it wasn't as hard to talk to them. It wasn't as hard because they had it, They're just sometimes in pain, but it was harder. It was easier to bring them out. With white folks, it's a lot. There's a lot of defensiveness to overcome. A lot. Yeah. It takes a lot to decenter whiteness in those groups. Anyhow, sorry. I don't want to take too much time, but I just wanted to share like how cool is this that I could just stumble upon a space and you're speaking to my heart. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sis.
Question though,
yeah.
In terms of like you're talking about, like it takes a lot to challenge and dismantle white supremacy in that space, but like who was driving that? Was it Black faculty or white faculty?
Oh my gosh, I wish there was black felt. That's another issue. There was there are actually, there's one that not on the faculty. There's one that was kind of an ally, but we didn't want to, and she was Asian actually, and she totally was behind us, but we didn't want to pressure her because she's often ostracized within the faculty when she brings up things.
Yeah.
So it's very, very hard for her. We do have other allies that are Black that I learn a lot from, that are in other areas, but not our program. I'm sorry, I totally missed your question, Dr. Nisi.
No, I was just wondering, like, who is driving that?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So there's certain content that is, I would say, not hitting the mark in terms of what it. So white folks are driving it. They're missing the mark, and then when we're in groups, like for example, there's case-based learning scenarios, and it might include, like someone with mental health issues, or someone who's Indigenous, someone who's another racialized, marginalized minority, and often like the people that are facilitating lack the skills themselves to be able to facilitate.
Right.
And therefore, then I come in as a student, I'm like, well, no, that's not quite how it works. There's this factor, there's this political factor, there's this social factor, there's this economic factor that you're not all considering.
Right.
Sometimes, but then I, as a very marginalized voice that the other folks may not believe, like the other folks, they're not learning from me because they don't see me as a legitimate source of knowledge.
Yeah.
So that's very stressful for me, and that's why we needed the Affinity group to go, not to just vent. We also do fun things together, but so what ends up happening is that they probably become even more entrenched in their white supremacy because this brown woman here, myself, doesn't know what she's talking about. When I'm looking at not just theory, I'm looking at evidence. I've researched it well. I do a ton of studying. I'm doing the work. And it's just not legitimate because it's in the wrong body. Not wrong for them, I mean. I have nothing to validate, no one to back me up. And usually, all of the BIPOC students, our group, we are just, for some reason, dispersed. Like, for example, in the smaller, the smaller case-based groups, they're smaller seminars sort of thing. I don't know if that's similar in medical school, but what happens is we're all spaced up, so we can't back each other up, and they're kind of using us almost to they almost think, this would be great to have a diverse group because this student has a political history background or whatever, and this student has a sociology, so that might be good to disperse all these different viewpoints. But what happens is that the white supremacy keeps getting validated because those students from the biomedical Eurocentric perspective, there's just more of them. And that's another issue. I don't understand why there needs to be more. I had no problem learning the biomedical stuff, none at all. I got classes in physiology, anatomy, all of that. But they have a hard time learning all of the sociological aspects and whatnot. It's very, very hard because they're coming from different undergrads as well. So it's not just race, the race, ethnicity and race. Definitely, that experience is something you cannot learn for sure. I see it everywhere. I see it, and I see intersectionality as well, the intersection of class, race, gender as well. But as I experience it. However, the epistemic part is also huge with, especially POC folks who might be a little bit, they still have that, they can still, it's still not hard to work with them, but the education, the historical, political, economic factors still needs to be incorporated for them as well. Yes, so to answer your question, Dr. Nisi, I'm sorry that was a wind-up way. I'm just thinking out loud.
Oh, that was perfect because it's basically you're illuminating how we usually have the burden of reliving the trauma, as Dr. Opara said during that session, and also you have the burden of doing all the labor.
Right. Unpaid, uncompensated. Right.
Yeah. I don't want the future students though to be unpaid. I know we did a hard work of starting something. Oh, and by the way, I'll just add this, just to give you some context into like our program. For example, I think in the last couple of weeks, the American Occupational Therapy Association, the president, Carolyn Baum, I don't know if you heard this, Dr. Apara, but she said that she, like, and it was during when a Black woman was co-presenting. Anyways, Carolyn Baum, a white woman, president of IOTA, said that back then, she's talking about the 80s, back then, she didn't see the humanity of Black people. Like, can you believe that? And she said, but now it's different because now there's 20% of them.
Wow.
Of them. That's how horribly disgusting and racist. I'm not sure, but this is what I'm immersed in. This is the type of folks that that really believe this and think that's not problematic at all, and wouldn't be able to point out what's problematic with that.
That's the thing, and that's the kicker, that they would not be able to point out what is problematic / straight up racist as all get out, and why. Right? Because they don't have the skills or the tools or the historical foundation. And so I appreciate you, sis. I mean, you gave an excellent dissertation. Thank you so much for speaking up and speaking your lived experience and expertise. You are an expert. And I want to lift up any student or trainee in this space or listening and on the replay or YouTube, wherever you are, LinkedIn. Many of you are the experts. You see my co-leader here, Brother Benny, medical student, right? And the students, the young folks are tearing it up. So you are often absolutely the expert in the room, okay? And you don't let nobody shut you down. And we are all working to ensure that we build those environments so that, and just like this sister is saying, that whereby you are recognized for that expertise. But again, yes, everything you said, the labor, the lack of compensation, lack of recognition of expertise, the reason why you had to go and create an affinity group for your own, to protect you and your people's, your communities, your classmates, your colleagues, mental and spiritual and emotional health. There's only so many ways you can take being reminded about the fact that other human beings dehumanize you. They dehumanized you back in 1500s. They dehumanize you in 2023, and they are clueless to any of it, which is a function of whiteness. That's how it works. By the way, the epistemologies of white ignorance, that you want to read that. But you really brought that home. I see that Brother Benny has his hands up, and then we will move to Sister Erica Taylor. Go ahead, Brother Benny.
Thank you for that. All right. So yeah, thank you for that. I'm gonna just kind of talk about the issue that we haven't really addressed, which is not all kinfolk are skinfolk, right? And so there is issue that exists with Black people seeking to get power, right? Seeking to get power from a system that's inherently, racist, white supremacist. It's, embedded in imperialism, colonialism, patriarchy, capitalism. And in order to get this power, right? And these parts of ourselves that we trade off leads us to identifying with whiteness more than with Blackness. So what that does to our mental health is these affinity groups are not useful for these Black people, right? Because they're not seeing them as a protective factor. They don't see Blackness as, something that you want to be around. They don't see it as the greatness that it is, because they're seeing Blackness through the lens of white people, right? And what that does, that causes internalized racism, right? That internalized racism causes damage to their mental health that they don't really know, because it's under, the radar of their consciousness, right? But there's some differences. There's some protective factors to that people don't think about. When we see Black people getting lynched, I identify with Blackness, right? I identify with my people, and that impacts my mental health. Because they identify with whiteness, when they see Black people getting lynched, there's a certain level of protective factor that they have in which it doesn't affect them as much, right? Because they're saying, oh, they probably wasn't doing the right thing. Oh, they probably had it coming. Oh, they bought all of the Fox News, tropes, right? And then on the other that causes that further impacts our mental health. And what that does is, pretty much if you're identifying with blackness, those affinity spaces allow you to be in a place of safety so that you can actually, heal. But what that also does is when, as I said, when you see black people getting harmed, you identify with that, and there's that transference, right, of the trauma, that collective trauma that we get. And so that's one thing I just wanted to point out in terms of, the how our allegiance to the dominant culture can impact how affinity spaces are useful or not useful to us. But at the same time, we have to know that the benefits of these affinity spaces is you finally in a place where you're not going to be gaslit for your experiences, where you're not going to feel like an imposter because you're understanding that it's more than just me that's experiencing this, right? You're not going to feel excluded because you finally have people who get you. You're not going to feel alone, and you're going to finally get the support that you need. And reading this whole thing, it's like, and relating it back to mental health, do these people care about our mental health? Do these people writing these articles, creating these organizations, do they care about the well-being of Black people? The system of mental health itself is rooted in imperialism. It's rooted in colonialism. It's rooted in slavery, ableism, capitalism. And how are we taking care of our people in this mental health system? We're chaining people, we're restraining them using chemical restraints, right? And it's the health care that we're delivering to people already is barbaric. So they don't care about our mental health. They don't even care about mental health in general, right? This is a system that exists solely to make money off of, our pain. And so my question is, do we even care what they think about our affinity spaces, right? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, we need to take care of our own. And so regardless of, whether or not they like it, we're not asking for permission. We're going to create these spaces just as we did this, and we're going to make sure that our people get the care that they need. So these spaces are absolutely necessary. And we have to know that, there's a reason why they're fighting us. There's a reason why they're trying to tear down history. There's a reason why they, the Flexner report closed down 5 medical schools. There's a reason why they're trying to close down all of these pipelines to bring minorities into medicine, right? It's because there's too many of us that are entering these systems and that are not trying to identify with whiteness and with white supremacy and that are pushing back on the systems, right? And the system now sees these people as a threat. And that's what's really happening. And so we got to continue creating these kinds of spaces, continue supporting the people who are doing the work within the systems. And then, like we've talked about this already, there's an inside-outside approach, right? We're going to change things from the system, but we're going to also create systems on the outside to move things along. So ultimately, our community needs us to do the work, and we have to do the work of taking care of our mental health because clearly they don't care. That's all I got.
Boy, that's all you needed to have, honey. You had, what you got, what we got, what we all listen, and then some. The ancestor said Ashe. So yes, I see all the emojis. You go ahead and go nuts with them emojis, baby. Yeah, brother Benny said, look, I can't take this anymore. Let me say all that's on my heart. Okay, not all skin folk are kinfolk, absolutely. And that's another level of complexity when we talk about affinity spaces. again, that's why we talk about white supremacism and we talk about whiteness, because those realities can exist in black bodies. They can exist in brown bodies. They can exist in indigenous bodies. We all have this experience. And so I like what the sister said earlier. She said that, but in these spaces, it's easier to confront that in a brother or sister or sibling, right? It's easier. But when it's in the mixed company, it's much, much difficult, because you know how we are. You know how you are in your family, the way you confront your brother, your son, like your biological, your blood, or whoever you call brother or sister, sibling, in the house versus how you act in the street, right? You already know. So in the kitchen, right? In our kitchen, there's a way we can really call each other to order. There's a way we can call each other and hold each other accountable. That's going to be different when we're elsewhere. We're always struggling. We all have gone through this, where one of our brothers, one of our sisters, one of our siblings says something out of pocket and totally out of order. But we don't want to, for the culture, we just hold our mouth and hope we can catch them outside and then handle them there. So you're right, absolutely. But like I said, I really love what Sister Red Sky said, which is that, but when we're together, we can call it out and hold them accountable in love when it's just us. And so I love that. But thank you for reminding, that is one of the levels. But that is part of the healing work that needs to happen in affinity groups, right? Like, we're not just together to be like, was that racist? Yes, that was racist. That was all racist. We unpack very complex things. We deal with it. And the article, the NEJM article, talks about that we get to address internalized racism. That's one of the things that we never feel safe to do in mixed company, right? And so these is very important for communal healing. So thank you for really naming that. Thank you for naming vicarious trauma as well. And I like how you said, well, one of the benefits, because sometimes what therapists will ask you when you're conducting or performing non-helpful behavior, destructive behavior, maladaptive behaviors, is, well, how is it benefiting you? I mean, you keep doing this thing. You must be benefiting from it some way. It is somehow meeting some need, right? What is the benefit? And like you said, it can be protective against things like Brother Jordan Neely's murder, right? Where the folks who don't affiliate or associate with Blackness and share that brotherhood and fraternity and sorority and family can just again fall into the conversations around whiteness. By the way, the whole conversations with the Jordan Neely conversations is another reason for affinity groups. Okay, when we have heard the things we have heard folks say and the ways they dehumanize this brother, right? That this is a survivor of capitalism and just white supremacist capitalist society, structured society that dehumanizes all of us and then disproportionately dehumanizes some of us. And so but absolutely, that protection could be it. But to your point, ultimately it's access to power, right? And so thank you for that. And I'm pointing out the system of mental health care that mirrors the overall system of healthcare and public health in this country as well, that falls into these same systems. So I appreciate you sharing that. I want to, before we go to brother, and I'm sorry, brother, I think I called you Erica Taylor, forgive me. But before we go to brother Eric Taylor, I just want to read Dr. McDade's offering on the thread. So please keep on giving their offerings and really shouting out #AART and get us trending. So affinity groups, he says, represent the solution to the gross inconsistency of suppressing the truth of white supremacy to protect the feelings of white people. In racial affinity groups that excludes whites, white feelings will be protected since they won't be there to hear what was said. I love that. Now that is logic for your ass. And of course, he lifts up that this is an excellent discussion. Well, we appreciate you, Dr. McDade, for that feedback. Brother Eric Taylor, welcome to the space. Thanks for your patience. And just to shout out Sister Yarabel, we see you. We know you're waiting. Sister Ann, Sister LaShawn will come to you. Brother Eric, yes, what do you have to offer? Talk your talk.
Man, how are y'all doing today? I hope everybody's doing well. I am not. Twitter and Twitter Spaces have become the bane of my existence. I've been staring at an article on mood congruence for about 2.5 hours now, and the only thing I've accomplished is writing on Twitter. So I'm gonna have to figure out how to keep my phone out of my office, turn off Twitter on the internet.
Oh my God.
And just,
when you figure that out, please let a sister know.
I'm in the middle of writing a dissertation, and this is not working out.
Oh Lord, I hear you.
But anyway, I wanted to say, kind of to all of you guys' points, and Brother Ben kind of stole the words out of my mouth just now. But what I like affinity groups, and I don't like them. And for context, like I am a clinical psychologist, so I've worked in from Chicago, and I worked. My last job was at a hospital on the west side of Chicago, in a predominantly Black and poor neighborhood. And when you go through the orientation for the hospital, you get down there on the first floor, and they're telling you how they don't tolerate violence. They don't tolerate their staff being treated poorly. The hospital is behind you 100%. The hospital has protections for you. The hospital does this work, but this hospital is a nonprofit. This hospital is a nonprofit that works with Medicare in the community so that if there are people that don't have these services, we can still support them. Again, I'll reiterate, on the west side of Chicago in a poor Black neighborhood. But when you get upstairs to your units, me working adult psychiatry, mainly serving patients with severe mental illness from bipolar and schizophrenia, most all of them in some state of psychosis when they enter the hospital. So when you get up there, you notice, oh, there's a Black patient, a little Black male patient that is schizophrenic and has an alert on his chart for violence in the past. But this violence was 15 years ago. And I see a little white lady patient literally berating, violently cussing out and attacking her care team, and she has nothing on her chart at all. They talk about patients that have been arrested or incarcerated before due to their mental illness or due to their homelessness or due to their trying to survive. And they have alerts, and they talk about them as, oh, this patient is coming in, this patient has a history of violence from 15 fucking years ago. And so, and that was a whole nother, and so I like affinity groups for the very reasons that everyone's lined out, or outlined here, is you can be seen, I can go and be myself, I can talk and share my experiences. But the reason I don't like them, and the reason why I join them, but I stand outside the room, is because it becomes a safe space, and we become, to me, complacent sitting there. And so we don't leave that room and take our ideas that we've built to make our communities better and bring them outside that room. I don't want power. I don't want to be above or on top of anyone. I only want two things in the world. I want to live and not be killed for being Black. And I just want you to leave me the fuck alone so that I can serve my people in the way that I know my people need to be served. Because I'm not some psychologist, PhD guy. I'm a guy from the south side of Chicago that was in that environment, who grew up with parents that didn't have shit, who grew up in the projects, who grew up doing their homework by candlelight. And oh, by the way, because I wasn't the best teenager, I got a GED and didn't finish high school, and was a part of a system that was predatory, telling kids to just drop out and go to community college. So I suffered through all of those things, and here I am now today, standing and trying to, my whole dissertation is on African-American fathers' attitudes towards exclusive breastfeeding.
Wow, yeah.
Simply because the benefits of breastfeeding are so insurmountable, but we're still stuck in the fact that we were made to be taking care of other people's babies and made to be wet nurses and taken away from our own families to support someone else. So in a Black community, we're inundated with ads of formula and this type of formula and this type of formula. And by the way, when those formulas have recalls, what do? They send those products, they don't throw them away, they send them to fucking African countries and have our people from our homeland getting sick and our babies dying from fucking listeria and salmonella and whatever other contaminants that are in there, because they're trying to colonize those areas and telling them that formula is better than the milk you already have. The nourishment that you already have in your body is not sufficient. We want to bring you another fucking water fountain so that you can use our formula and mix up and then wonder why your fucking kids are dying. We want to colonize them and tell them our idea of child rearing and raising babies and the four types of a parent is what's best for your kid, even though you've grown up holding your baby for the entirety of their lives and they barely hit the floor until they're 18 months, and you all sleep together in the same room and your family is communal and everybody takes care of each other. That's not the right way to do it, because that's not how we do it in weird spaces. Western, educational, industrialized, you know, the I can't fucking remember the rest now because I'm getting a little high, but I get upset when I see young brothers, especially young psychiatrists and young psychologists. I always approach them and ask them, why are you here? Not only why are you here, but what brought you here? What do you know about this community? And what community are you from? And most of the time, no matter how Black they are, they're almost always so white adjacent that you wouldn't recognize them. And it's very disheartening, because that doesn't serve the people of the population that we're trying to serve. You can say all day that this is what I want to do, this is what I see, this is what happened within my family that drove me to this decision. But when you come from a PWI and you're assimilating to that fact, or you come from even from an HBCU, and like Dr. Woodson said, you can go to an HBCU, but where does the books and the education come from that you're getting in that HBCU? And what are you assimilating to once you get it? No matter where we come from, when we go into these places and spaces and the idea with the mindset of service, we're still going back to, there's still research today about why Black clinicians are not believed over white clinicians. I still have a problem when I am the most educated person in the room. I still go in with my head down and make sure that I prove myself to people that don't even have a quarter of the knowledge that I do have, don't even have a quarter of the understanding about what is happening to them, what is happening within their brain, how their worldview is driving their responses and reaction to the stimuli that are presented to them. But still, my head is down because I need to make sure that you understand, yeah, I'm a kid from the south side of Chicago in the projects, but I've earned my right to be here. I've had patients literally tell me where they come from, and we talk about their neighborhood, and me not realizing what I'm engaging myself in, and it breaking me down to the point where I'm bringing up old traumas from my childhood that I had no idea that this patient would have me access. And now I'm worse shit for the next week because I need to do self-care and take care of myself. So I get upset when, you know, I love these affinity groups and I love going to places where, because there's not a lot of Black clinicians, so I love going to places where I can be myself and have someone to identify with. But I get upset because I want to take that information and I want to take all that knowledge and take all those feelings outside the door and say, hey, this is what we came up with, and this is what we're going to emulate on the outside. I honestly don't give a fuck about having power over anything or anyone. I just want to take care of my own people, and I want my own people to be able to come to us. We have a huge problem still in mental health where Black people are telling each other, just go lay down. Just go pray about it.
Talk to pastor.
It's going to work out. No, the fuck it's not. It's not going to work out. My biggest problem is I see children and adolescents in my practice, and I'll tell you right now, 95% of the time, what I want to prescribe to them is a new caregiver because they're always in the way. I can't, the recidivism rate of an inpatient psychiatric hospital is so high. I'll see, especially young Black boys that are like 19 and 20, considered adults, so they go to adult psychiatry. Why are you here? You just left a month ago. Why are you here? Have you not been compliant on your meds? Have you not been doing this? What about what we talked about? Well, I was taking my meds, but my mom said I'm good now, so I don't need to take them anymore. And then something happened. Yeah, you're good now because you're compliant with your meds, not the other way around. So I need you to continue taking your meds so that you can remain good and do the things that you need to do. There's nothing wrong with having schizophrenia. Obviously, I'm biased. It's schizophrenia or bipolar or autism or it's not who you are. It's a characteristic of who you are that drives your decisions and your worldview and informs how you move throughout your life. It informs what decisions that you make and how you see people that see you. That is it. It is not who you are. So it's really hard to get people to understand that their diagnosis is not a moniker or a t-shirt to put on. It's just information, and that's it. And it's very frustrating to get caregivers to understand that there is no level of you're cured. You're never going to be cured. There is no way to cure mental illness. No matter what anyone says to you, it's not going to happen. And for me to say that you can do better or be better from this is bullshit, and I am not about that, and I would never do that. But we are getting in our own way. And I just want us to understand and step out the fucking way and let us, if you don't want to do it, you want to stay home and you have a problem confronting whiteness, cool. Just stand aside and let me come up front and I'll do it because I don't have a problem. I stand up for patients all day. My main job is advocacy. And that's really all I care about. I care about helping people no matter who you are. And I care about advocating for people that don't know how or can't advocate for themselves.
Period. Like that's on period dot. And I just, Brother Eric, listen, you got to come back to the round table and be a guest. Okay. Go ahead and DM me because I also want to connect you with another brother who is a clinical psychologist, Brother Jonathan, and does great work. And he always is looking for fellow brothers in the field. So I would love to connect both of you, but absolutely everything you said, yes and amen. He said, listen, I don't want power. Just leave me alone. Don't kill me for being Black and while I'm busy being Black, and I let me just take care of my people, period. That's what I want to do. And I said yes and amen. I want to bring in Dr. Valdez to respond to you, and then we'll move to Sister Yarabo. But I do also want to lift up, thank you for lifting up the, so nuance. I love nuance. That's what we do when we're in our spaces. We can massage nuance, right? It's not black and white. This is like Afro epistemology, right? Where we know things are complex and interrelated, nuanced, textured, layered, and we can address all of those things and live them and inhabit them, and we can be dynamic in that and allow it to evolve over time. We might come together around this subject next week and we have a different take on it. That's fine. It's okay. And that's Afro epistemology. And so I just want to lift up this piece. Like I like affinity groups and I don't like affinity groups. And this is why. And I love what you said because you actually did activate in me some frustrations I've experienced in some of our affinity groups. Because again, it sounds, it's like we get together, we talk, and that's great. Talk is great. By the way, talk to me is action, because as Brother Benny would tell you, as you, Brother Eric, would say, our mental health experts, it is therapeutic. Talk is therapy. The being seen, the knowing you're not alone, the validation, the affirmation, all of those things, these are important and critical. At some point, to your point, you are also looking for some action, some advocacy, some movement in a larger at the larger picture, right? And I hear that as well. So I want to remind us again that the definition, that's why we always level set and we've set the foundation and we put that in order. The definition of racial affinity group caucusing, right, involves facilitation. right? Like there's a facilitated component to it, right? That incorporates praxis, and praxis incorporates theory, self-reflection, and action. Okay, so it is key that the facilitation is integrating the theorizing piece, the reflective piece, the discussions, the conversations, all of that. But there's a third component, which is action. So if we look at it as three bubbles, right? You have the self-reflection, we have the theorizing, what is all this based on, our history, our context, all those pieces. But the third bubble is critical, and that is action. All right. And so it's important that we incorporate that. And the third piece I want to remind us is that, racial affinity group caucusing is limited in its, ability to make things happen when it's not existing in a larger system that is committed to anti-racism, justice, and equity. So we want to lift that up. And the article spells that out, that, using the the UCSF example, that this fits in this larger curriculum and programming that is addressing anti-racism, justice, and equity. And that is very key to your points, because everything you're saying really happens when those things are missing. So if we are focusing only on the theorizing, the reflection, and we miss the action part, then that frustration that you're naming, that sort of distress, that kind of restlessness is produced when it's not fitting in this larger schema of change institutionally, then yes, that also is produced. So I really appreciate you sharing that. Dr. Valdez, do you have anything to add before we go to Sister Yarabel?
Sure. I just want to thank Brother Eric for his comments. And I think he speaks for a lot of us that we just want to be left alone and be able to care for our people and make sure they get equitable care. And I understand that the points made about affinity groups. I do have concerns about affinity groups being required in the curricula. And I don't know from the article, but it felt like it was required. And I also have real concerns about who's facilitating and moderating these groups. If it is part of the curricula, it's likely to be somebody who holds power over the learners in that room. And still that creates problems with authenticity too. And so, I like the idea, please forgive me, I don't remember the sister who talked about this, of kind of informally doing things. But I do think that, we need spaces to be authentic and to share our feelings. There has to be some offloading of the heavy weight of facing racism and white supremacy every day, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in these groups. And I think that a lot of caution and intentionality has to be included, and it needs to be voluntary, right? People, choose whether or not they want to do that. And I think one of the really important things that Brother Eric said is that this is a Band-Aid. Right? This is a Band-Aid, and we don't want to rely on affinity groups to kind of just continue to progress and get through. We really have to deal with the underlying issues. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you think of from a medical thing, we have to rid the body of the disease, right? The Band-Aid might help us move along for a little while, but it's still disease. We've got to remove that. And so I agree that we have to really be pushing and doing this work. And I think we have to use caution with affinity groups. There's the potential for harm as much as there is the potential for healing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I believe that the paper, it is not required. I believe it is optional, opt-in in their program. But all the other pieces that you named are important. I do want to lift up a nuance. We don't have to massage it, but I want us to just think about, if it is informal, going back to the original, the Sister Blue Sky that was chatting earlier, a red sky, I apologize, I missed the color, red sky, that mentioned the issue around uncompensated labor. We know that when things are institutionalized, you can sort of, incorporate a funding stream and mechanism for the labor, because there is labor involved. And so I just wonder, as we freedom dream, what that looks like, where it is informal, but it's funded, and the time and labor spent could be something compensated. What could that look like or not? And those are just some thoughts that arise. So I appreciate those thoughts. Sister Yarabel. Oh, I'm sorry. There was a voice. There was somebody. Did somebody?
Yeah, that was mine. I'm sorry. The one last thing
sure.
I wanted to say was, we talked a little bit about research and what the research says about certain spaces. And I always want to interject that when I consume research as a scientist and just as a regular consumer, I'm always reading with a grain of salt, because research data and outcomes don't mean anything until I can apply them to a community and make them work. So I'm always reading with a bit of skepticism and wondering, first of all, who is the target audience? Who is this benefiting? And mostly, who is it harming? If I can read this research and know that the ideas are going to be taken from here and used for harm within my community and advantage in another community, I need to speak up and challenge that. So I challenge everyone here, as an academic, as a doctor, as a student, to do so as well.
Absolutely. We have to be critical consumers of science and of the research. Also, another who to ask is, who were the researchers, right? So not just who the target, the benefit and the harm, but who even did the study, and who, who funded it, honey. Like, all these are very critical questions. And every study has limitations and bias. And so we have to be critical consumers of science. That's one of the things that Brother Benny works on. I do work on this too. Creating citizen scientists is a lot of, and we'll put it down, as I think it's a great topic. And Brother Eric, I think maybe you'll come back for that and be one of our co-hosts for that topic, as well as any other ones you want to talk about. So I appreciate you. Sister Yarabel, thank you for your patience. You've been so patient. Sister Ann, Sister LaShawn, thank you all for your patience. But the mic is yours, sis.
Thank you, sis. It's Jari Bale, but Jari is just fine, Dr. Ijeoma.
Thank you. Jari Bale. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, I just want to first thank you for this space and for being a force of love and truth in every space that we've been in this movement work.
Thank you.
I think when I think about affinity spaces, and something that I've been grappling with is that, to what Brother Benny said, and also Brother Eric, is around, the ways in which we construct these affinity spaces. And if we're thinking about race, knowing that race is, all of color, consciousness, and culture, and the ways in which we engage in affinity spaces that are outside of whiteness, right? That then become, to what Dr. Cynthia Dillard references in the spirit of our work, hush harbors. Right, where we have the ability to find homes while the world is set on fire. And the reason why a lot of folks are scared of these affinity spaces or these hush harbors is because they are not the center in the work. They are not centered in the work. And something truly powerful that Brother Eric said is around, it's a way for us to find our home places, but it's also a way for us to build coalition, right? What are we struggling with in this struggle work together? How are we strategizing? How are we organizing, right? Yeah, we have big feelings. Yes, this is body work. We know that white supremacy is also something that we have to navigate in the body, in our nervous system, right? And affinity spaces are a way for us to reset, to do body work, right? To allow for hope to seep in, and also to get stronger, not only in the body, but as a collection of bodies in the work, right? To strategize and organize towards abolition, towards reparation, and to really, dreaming about new spaces that are outside of whiteness and white supremacy and all the isms that we currently see so bold and loud within our system structures and institutions. And so I'm brief, I'm sending y'all love, and I hope that in your affinity spaces, you're not only doing some work of the body, right, to allow for hope and love to exude, but also to strategize and organize and build harbors of coalition.
Man, why is there not a snap emoji? Can we get that on? Sister Jaribe, thank you so much for that. That was so poetic. That was, to me, that was rhythm right there, Brother Benny. Sister Nisi, that was music. That was lyrics. I have nothing to respond, because she said it like that, what she said. Right? Sister Nisi, do you have any response before we go to Sister Ann?
I'm in touch and agree. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing you have to keep in mind, is that, it has to serve the right purpose if we're thinking time out to do it, obviously. But I think me as more of like also chicken little like disruptor type. So I mean, I make no bones about anything, and I agree with Eric. I want to be left the fuck alone to take care of and fight for and defend my people. But I'm also the first one to show up to chant down Babylon too, and I think that's something that we might neglect in some of those spaces. Is that as much as it's a safe harbor, it should also be a platform for your righteous anger and indignation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the article talks about the fullness. I really loved this in the back to the article, the NEJM article talked about that these are spaces where we get to express the fullness of our humanities and the fullness of our emotions. I think they said from hope to rage, and everything else in between. Absolutely. Righteous anger, which is, I find, a very helpful, constructive emotion, by the way. And this is the powerful thing I love about our, well-constructed affinity groups. No fucking apologies and no fucking apologizing. Like nobody is, I'm sorry, I just feel like we don't do that shit. Cut that down. There's no apologizing. We are unapologetic. This is what it is, and it is. And we hold containers for that. We hold containers for the fullness of the anger. I've been in spaces where people are weeping. Do you know what weeping is? Weeping is not, weeping is like snot nose, crying, just the whole body as this person is expressing all the feelings, all of it, right? And they would never have been able to do that. In fact, partly the bigness of that expression was related to the fact that there was no space for them to do that anywhere else. In fact, especially particularly for Black women, many of us cannot even do it at home, because if we look like we're breaking down and we are the pillar of our community, what are other people going to do, right? So many of us carry, like the sister said, oh my God, sis, everything you said, that and amen, ashe, say everything right. The body work, we carry it in our bodies. We carry it in our bodies. I'll say this last thing and then we'll go quickly to Sister Ann. I'm looking at the time and I want to get us out, and so that we have to do some body work. And we will close out this space with body work and some, racial trauma breathing and all that, as we have started to do. I found that we are doing this now almost all the time. So I think this is just what we do because everything Brother Eric said, he said, look, I'm getting myself worked up and now I'm going to have to go do some self-care. Yes. And that's what we have to do. And we'll do some communal care, but this shows up in our bodies. I just want to quickly mention, I don't remember if it was in the space here or something else. I talk all the time, so it's like, which one was I saying this thing? But if you've heard this before, forgive me as I repeat it. If not, well, it's new. There was a recent, oh yeah, I remember now where I was saying it, some interview. Anyway, recent paper I was reading, and the conclusion about it, they were looking at Black-white differences in exercise and dietary habits. You know how they do, right? And so you already know the conclusion of this study without you even critically consuming it, as Brother Eric was saying. Basically, like, Black folks don't eat as healthy, particularly Black women, as white folks, even as having higher BMI. So we have to do better by educating them about how to eat better. This is a paraphrase, but when you read the study, you will find that is practically verbatim. And no critical context, and just like, Sister Reskai said for the other study she was referencing, no reason as to why that's the case. But I'm relating that to everything we're saying again and again, to Brother Eric's point. How traumatizing is that to read that, you reading that as a Black woman or as a Black person, and being told for the 50 millionth infinity time that you are unhealthy inherently and your foods are naturally unhealthy. Like, what does that do to you? That it has nothing to do with surviving, like doing the impossible work of survival. Do you know, I try to remind people, do you know how many genocidal attempts we have survived? I don't understand. Do you all know? Oh Lord. Do you all know, when you look at history, again, we go back to why don't they want us to know this stuff? That when you read history, you're like, I don't understand how we're still around. How are Black folks still here? I mean, I get goosebumps when I think of us. I can't tell you the awe I have for Black folks. I can't, because how are we still here? Fuck hypertension, fuck diabetes, fuck cancer, asthma, and all the other things that really are just battle scars of survival. Health disparities, for me, the diseases that disproportionately impact us, are just scars. They just tell you that these motherfuckers are surviving, right? Like they are, that's just, to me, that's the way I interpret these disparities. How do you survive this violence and multiple genocidal attempts without
Not
some
just
scar?
not just survive, because you can read that same article and go outside a Black neighborhood and see how many fucking fast food restaurants.
No, but exactly, and
in a white neighborhood,
exactly,
and not just survive, but fucking Black don't crack.
period,
Stay goddamn
period,
time.
period,
The whole time stay
period, period, brother. You better unmute and talk your talk. I love it.
It's a
We
whole branch of medicine right now dedicated to making people look like us. How about that?
okay, listen. Okay, look. Okay, so when we talk about the structural violence, as brother was saying, where are we putting things? And I think the other sister said the active commercialization and advertisement of all the quote unquote risky behavior things, that are alcohols, that are malt liquor, and the rest that are directly marketing to our communities, like you said, the McDonald's and the Popeyes chicken and all of them things, and all of this and all of that, and the third and the fifth and the fourth, building the factories right next to where we live and go to school and send our babies to play, the whole everything, and we still here. And to the brother's point, many of us even daring to thrive. Don't play with us. Don't play with us.
That annoys me as a computational biologist, because firstly, to ignore all of the social determinants of health as if they haven't been entrenched into the way that our health policies and just all other housing environmental policies have contributed to health inequities. But to know in this day and age, in the 21st and a half century, about epigenetics, about how many external and internal and genetic factors go into someone's medical background, to their state of being, to the things that influence their metabolism and everything else. It's crazy that we even have to argue about how racism impacts health.
Right.
We know so much about how our very genetic code can be changed by the environment around us.
Absolutely. And still survive all of that. And so it just goes back to what, like as Brother Eric was saying, just in terms of being critical consumers of the literature, and me reading that and understanding that they lack the whole critical consciousness and the whole, this Mama Jama that wrote what he wrote, that was mad about the NEJM article, is not mad about this. Right? This paper I'm quoting right now, citing right now, is not morally abhorrent, right? Because it reinforces the worldview and the understanding as Black inferior and less than, and educate the hell out of them to fix what you created. So we indeed need to be critical consumers of the literature. We indeed need to understand that the work of science research and the rest of these things are traumatic and traumatizing and re-traumatizing when it's not done through the appropriate lens. And that's why we need to be here doing the science, doing the research. That's why we're encouraging our children to walk this walk, and we are creating these environments and trying to transform them fundamentally so that our children can thrive and know that they belong, because this belongs to them, and as well as each other. So anyway, there was just so much in there, and I just want to appreciate the family for doing that. Sister Ann, please, thank you for your patience. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sister Joma. I appreciate what you're doing here today, as always. It's so right on. She dropped down on listener. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, good. All right. I don't know why I got to go last. I done tore up the whole house. I tore up the whole house. I've cried 15 times. Oh, my Lord. So by the time you get to me, I'm a wreck. But I did, seriously, I did try to write my stuff down so I don't go all over the place. And I'll try to be quick. I think, I'm with Brother Eric. I'm ambivalent toward these affinity groups. I've seen them as sword and shield. So I don't know how to position them. I think it's a shame that here we are in 2023, and we still have a need for affinity groups. I mean, what the hell? I also just kind of want to point out, and this is not a critique, but I've noticed over listening to for the last hour or so, when you listen to the varying vocal tones, and pretty much the folks who are experiencing this in a hot way, there's a lot of fire. But whoever is on this line with that little chippery, happy hee voice, how are you doing this work and not coming away with some degree of anger? And that's not a critique. It's just, I think it's jealousy. Maybe I should own that, is that how could I possibly be that happy experiencing this shit? I just think that dichotomy, it was a trigger. I think it's a trigger. I have to own that, perhaps. So I just want to kind of put that out there in case anybody else is feeling that or noticed that. The fabric of the vocal tones, how that's slightly irritating, but it's on me. There's nothing, it's not, I can't judge how other people fight, but I know if I were sitting in a room and somebody like that was up there talking, I would leave. That would provoke the shit out of me. But anyway, just wanted to share that. I think what the article perhaps is referring to or pushing back on or is getting at is access. Now that the social contract has been broken and Blacks are finally accepting what whites really think of them, and it's really clear now. I mean, there's no hiding. They pretty much have said it. It's been on the wall for over 400 years, but, we just want to believe. Well, that's gone. Social contract is broken. Now you see them for what they are. They see you for what they always saw you for what. And so now you see the game. And so, self-preservation is kicking in finally. And we're starting to pull away and saying, you know what, we got to find a better way. And it doesn't really include that because we can be Black without white, but white can't be white without Black. And so we're starting to understand the power of that. And so, how dare you have a focus group and I can't have access to it? Well, you know what? That's not fair because I should have access to every aspect of your life. And we're saying, no, I don't think so. I think these folks, I think I want to lean into this in these these affinity groups. I want to lean into that because I find I get validated and all that other stuff. For me, coming through as a first fruit, we needed affinity groups, but we didn't need affinity groups because we were having a problem with the hostility of the institution that were drumming us out as first fruits, first person to be in a engineering program or the first to be in a biology program. I'm coming through. We needed to be grouped together or come together because we needed to learn how to navigate the work. But we were fierce warriors. And so we wanted to be around people who fought like us. And so we weren't trying to feel like we needed to have validation. We just had to know what did you get for problem number 5? Or, so we weren't about the work. We weren't about, the internal. I don't even know if we were going through anything internally because we saw ourselves as badass. We have arrived. We're here. So we have this inflated view of all the things that we could conquer, and we could just figure out what was the answer to problem number 5. So maybe we were just, immature, but I don't know. Focus groups be damned. I think there's an opportunity to break free of the need to collectively come together and say, yeah, this is what happened to me. And you don't have any skills to do something about it. So I think you were right in what you were saying. There's got to be some action. We need some skills. Okay, we're done with the talking part. Okay, what's happening. How many more data points do you need? Like I say, they broke the social contract 15 times. You know that's happening. Now they're getting ready to strangle you, just like in the 60s. You just walk up to you and strangle you in the street. I mean, what more do you need? Okay, you don't belong here. We don't want you here. And we're going to unalive you until you finally get it. All right, so now that you have that in front of you, do you really want to go to an affinity group and talk about what you see? Or do you want to have some skills? And what do you do about protecting yourself? What do you do? How do we go in and be vulnerable in the moment? I'm not going to run off to my group to be vulnerable. I'm going to be vulnerable right here in this spot, and you're going to hear it. And if you look like you're getting ready to loose it out, because you need to learn how to be uncomfortable. And we're going to be uncomfortable today. I mean, you got to learn how to take that stand, and you're not going to be able to do it if you're running off in a group somewhere and you're talking among people of like mind, and then when you get back out into mixed environments, and now you close down. What have you learned? So if you begin with the end in mind, like I keep calling focus group. This affinity group is going to end in 6 months, so we got work to do. It's like we don't want to be a soap opera. What are we trying to do? What kind of skills do you need so that you can get out there and take your stand and be a warrior? And you're going to get hurt and you might even die, but you got to know how to self-resurrect. It's all in us. So I say all that to say, affinity groups, they were important back in the 60s and the 70s. Well, they weren't around the 60s, but in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s. And the people who, in the corporate setting, if you got affinity groups going on, I hope there's some corporate people. If you are in a corporate setting in 2023 and you still have a need for affinity groups, something's wrong. There's just too much data, too much information on how to be better, and you still have created or kept an environment where people have a need for an affinity group. I mean, that is not a flex. That is not a flex. And what it does is it provides entertainment for the C-suite, because the people who really benefit from these focus groups are white males who run these operations, and they don't really have to do the work because y'all doing it for us. And then you bring back your data and you advocate for your various programs, and then we get to decide whether that's something we really want to do. And chances are, since you still have an affinity group, you have not seen the need to really do anything. And so then the affinity group goes on for yet another 5, 10, 15 years. So, I mean, it's crazy. You just keep doing the same thing over and over again and getting nowhere. So I say that. What else can I say? And that and it's important to have a goal state. So for me, goal state, I know we're going to be there when white doctors and white medical staff are holding these kinds of discussions, who are as animated as we are about their participation in racism and race-based medicine, and are sick and tired of it and are trying to figure their way out. We'll know we're there when I'm sitting down and looking at a white male or white female physician or medical person, and they are schooling me. I missed this, and this. I had no idea y'all was doing that. Oh my goodness. Wow, how did I miss that? I want to be put back on my heels from your study and what you finally are able to articulate and to say, yeah, we did it. And here's the science, or here's the artifacts that inform us that we did this. We participated in this genocide and demise that we now see in our medical practices today. I want to be a student to them. I'll know we're there when enough of them have done the work where we don't have to sit around like this, right, and teach them. They've actually done some work that startles us.
I love that. I love that.
Like where is the Jane Elliott in medicine?
Oh, question.
Where is he?
I love that, sister. And that's the question, right? What is the goal statement? What is the long-term plan here? I'll know we're there when. When do we know we're there? What does there look like? Like, whoo, you have opened up all the questions. Brother Eric, I see your hand. We're gonna listen to Sister LaShawn, and then we'll end with you briefly because I'm looking at time and I want us to close in the next few minutes. And so, but we'll hear from Sister LaShawn. We'll hear what you have to say very briefly, and then we will close out with our wonderful co-host. Thank you, Sister Ann. That was outstanding. I do want to know, I thank you for being honest and transparent because this is family in the beginning and just talking about your trigger. And I think again that these are learning spaces where we learn about ourselves. We take accountability and responsibility for our what we're bringing into spaces that we occupy, and we make space for the diversity that is represented by our community. And we know that people fight differently, and thank you for saying that. I think that was an important learning point for all of us. And not everybody comes to spaces in a particular way, and some folks they just have their ways of doing what they do. And like scripture says, by their fruits you shall know them. And that's where how we roll. And what's the fruit regardless of the approach. So I appreciate you making space for that. I think many people do struggle with that, and so you naming that has helped somebody here today to recognize that we all fight differently because we all come from different spaces and places. We're a very diverse community. I like to say Black folks are some of the most heterogeneous groups ever. But the beautiful thing is, by their fruit you shall know them, and the fruit we produce shows that we are in unity, right? Not uniform, but unified. And so I thank you for that. Sister LaShawn, why don't we end with you? We'll hear briefly from Brother Eric and then close out. Go ahead, sis. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you so much for providing this space, Dr. Apara, and to all of the contributors here. I'm here as a caregiver, as a community member, and as a fellow advocate. My beautiful, gorgeous, amazing, talented son, I'm here as his speaker, as he is no longer with us because the medical and healthcare system here chose violence instead of healing. And so I wanted to express to those in the room who are medical professionals, doctors, nurses, anyone within the healthcare field, and those who are in training and on their way there, the importance of your presence in those rooms. When we went to see my son and I arrived there and he was in the ICU and his lips were cracking and his skin was dry, and I brought this to the attention of the staff there that this is not acceptable, and why isn't there someone here who is aware of and culturally sound of what his needs are, not just with him being cared for, his health, but in his appearance and making sure he's well. And the next morning when I came in, they had brought in a Black nurse, and she came to me and she said, I washed him up for you. I put lotion and oil on him, and I combed his hair and his beard. And I just wanted you to know I'm here now. And I tell you the importance of that, and the importance of your presence in that room when we arrive. And while we are having those experiences as patients and as caregivers, that goes light years into our having the hope there. And so I just wanted to give my view as a caregiver, as a patient, and as a community member and fellow advocate, the importance of these affinity groups, because we need you to stay. We need you to be encouraged. We need you to come and be our hope and our rescue and to translate for us. Please, we need you. And that was what I wanted to share.
Oh my God. Like if I was planning this whole thing, which I didn't, I couldn't have planned a better way to round up this whole conversation. At the end of the day, it's about what Sister LaShawn said. It's about our patients and their families who and their communities. And we have to be here for that. No wonder Dr. Uche Blackstock wept when she saw the loss, 35,000 Black physicians by 2019 gone because of this Flexner report, right? And then that is physicians. Now, Dr. Valdez, we know more about what happened with nursing. I'm still trying to learn the vastness of the impact of white supremacism across the healthcare ecosystem, what's going on in pharmacy, nursing, social work, OTPT, veterinary medicine, dentists. We have to remember healthcare system is very, very plethoric, and these realities exist across the entire field, right? In public health. And so this is just physicians. Now let's talk about the nursing loss and the loss in social work and the loss in pharmacy, and the list goes on. It is immeasurable. It is immeasurable. And who is hurt? Who is harmed? Like Brother Eric said, who is harmed? Sister LaShawn. Sister LaShawn's son. This is life. That's why when I talk about these things, I say this is life and death. This is not just about the p-value, the chi-square. This is life and death we're talking about. People life. Beautiful, beautiful lives. So I appreciate you, Sister LaShawn, for really bringing it home to us. This is not this theoretical, which again, we love theories, all great. We're just saying at the end of the day, though, ultimately, though, what counts is our mothers, our fathers, our uncles, aunties, cousins, friends, people represented as patients, but just people, our people. Matters. And we have to be here. We have to be here. Brother Eric, I'm going to give you 30 seconds because I want our co-host to respond to Sister Ann, Sister LaShawn, and then just closing remarks so we can close the space so that everyone can rest and you can write your fucking dissertation. Go ahead, brother. Go ahead. You muted yourself. There you go.
Okay, so what I wanted to say is nothing is not. Damn it. Okay, I'm here.
All right.
So what I wanted to say is not to my sister because she's not. She's my aunt. So to my auntie Ann, what I want you to understand is while you were doing that work, while you were fighting that fight, the reason why you didn't recognize the things that are coming up now is because while you were out fighting, while you and my parents and the rest of our parents that are in my generation were out fighting, the one thing you did was leave us behind. So now we are here in our generation as a young generation Xer or older millennial or whatever, trying to figure out what our place and space is in this world and how we're going to make our impact and bring it forward, because we didn't have that example, thereby being taken away from us, and by being the fight being so hard that we were essentially, the kids were forgotten about. So I want to recognize that is how I feel, and I want to make sure that going forward we don't do that to our young Gen Z people. We don't do that to their generations after them.
Oh, I love that. That's such an important point. Oh, there's so much to unpack there. I made a note that's going to be a talk, a roundtable on its own, the intergenerational piece to this conversation. And thank you for that. I've heard that a lot. I'll start with Brother Benny and we'll work our way backwards. Brother Benny, because we haven't heard your beautiful voice in a minute. What would you like? Brother Eric, I'm going to mute you. There you go. Brother Benny, anything to respond to what any of the speakers have said, but specifically Sister Ann, Sister LaShawn, but certainly what Brother Eric just dropped right now. And if you could include your concluded remarks as well, that would be amazing. Go ahead, please.
Thank you.
I will respond to what Sister Ann said. I think there is a lot of truth in the fact that sometimes, and I guess to what Eric said as well, we get complacent in some of these spaces, or we don't really know what the goal is. And so I think it's important for us to really take time to understand and create intentions behind these these what were they called? Affinity groups, yeah. Because without the intention, right? If we want it to just be, kind of like a coping session support group kind of thing, you can make it that. But if the intention is to actually, change the structures and the systems that are causing the harm to us and that are causing harm to our community, then we have to be intentional about what it is that we're trying to achieve there, and we have to be intentional about what skills do we currently have. We have to take inventory of who we are, what skills we possess, and what skills we need in order to get the job done. Because ultimately, if we're gathered together and different people have different skills, I see it as a great opportunity for us to learn from each other and to actually meet the demand. But I definitely agree. There's no point to just being in a space, but not actually doing, the action part, right? Even what we do here, like it's called AR action roundtable, right? We don't just sit around and talk about it. We're all trying to figure out how we can learn from each other and then use what we learned and put that into action in our own communities. And so I definitely want to just echo the importance of that, because you know, mental health is just coping from the system rather than actually addressing the system, right? And we can't just cope from the system that exists as it continues to cause, more harm. We have to actually do, the advocacy. We have to do the actual changing the systems. And so I definitely want to push on that. But besides that, I want to just let y'all know that we are going to have the next one in 2 weeks, and we're gonna update our website. It's on bmhv.com/aart. If you want to find us on social media, it's BMH Village on all social media. But I want to thank you all for coming together, creating this space so that we can talk and address these issues that are impacting our community, so that we can come up with strategies to actually make the change that we need to see. So much love to you all. Blessings.
Amen. Many blessings. Absolutely. And that the website, the YouTube, and other links are on the dashboard, and also in the room thread as well. And you could just scroll through, but I'll try to put it on again. So thank you, Brother Benny, everything that you said. Sister Nisi, anything came up for you while you were listening to Sister LaShawn, Sister Ann, Brother Eric, or any of the previous speakers, and also your concluding thoughts?
Yeah, just in general, I think just refocusing on harm reduction in general. I think we all take for granted that a lot of medical providers, have this oath of doing no harm, but they absolutely are doing harm and continuing centuries of harm. And as we've heard from a lot of us in our communities, our care providers in those exam rooms are the faces of the broken system that we all exist under. And I think not just in this context, but just in our wider societal context, it's not a time for complacency. Now is the time to stand up. It's our time to take up this mantle that our ancestors have carried for years, hundreds of years, because the South is rising again, like they said they always would. And these people are very intentional not just in the medical field, but in education, in public policy, in every field. And they're dauntless. They're indefatigable. So it's not time for us to be complacent and forget their primary purpose. We shouldn't be afraid to collect white tears and mix them with our Kool-Aid and drink it liberally. They're here, they are destroying our communities, our lives, our children, the books. We're back to banning books. So, I really just hope everyone takes to heart that this is the dawn of a new age, and we're going to have to be stalwart in our resistance and our righteous indignation and using our anger as fuel. We should all have goals, certainly, but we should also cultivate and respect and cherish our safe spaces as well, because we're going to need them. So.
Thank you, Sister Nisi. Don't be afraid to collect white tears and drink them with your Kool-Aid, okay? If that is not on a t-shirt, Sister Nisi, with Hood Medicine on the back, I will be very, very upset. So please, let's go ahead and trademark that right there and move it right along. Thank you for that. Absolutely. Dr. Ana Maria Valdez, you are our last speaker. Come on now. Let us have it. Let us have it. What are thoughts? Any reflections to the previous speakers and your own concluding thoughts?
Yes, so many powerful offerings from all of you. I just am so grateful to have been in community and had these discussions with everybody. And the last thing that I want to say is, if my voice tone was triggering for Sister Ann, I deeply apologize for that. I want you to know that I wake up and go to bed enraged every day. And the reason why I try to be intentional about what I'm saying and how I'm saying it is I'm phenotypically white. I'm white adjacent. I experience power and privilege that my mother, my sister, my family do not experience. That hurts deeply, but I recognize that. And so I am very intentional about not centering myself when I'm in community with my people and the people that I love. And so that is why I'm very careful about my tone, but it is never, ever my intent to harm anybody, particularly a Black woman. And so if my tone was part of the triggering, I deeply apologize.
I want to pause here for just a restorative moment. Sister Ann, would you like to come off mic and address? I don't know if, anyway, just let's take just a moment, a beat for some restorative practice. Sister Ann, do you, and you don't have to at all.
No, I'm here.
So what do you?
I own my feelings. I don't want you to feel bad. I don't want you to feel bad because of your tone of voice. There's nothing, you are authentic in this space. And that's all we could ever ask of anyone who joins us in conversation, is just be whoever you are. And you're willing to do that. I'm saying, whenever I'm around that in this space, and I notice, the people who are living through it are coming in with the heat and the anger and the tears and pushing back and trying to hold it in. And then there's some, bird-like voice. It's like, what? And then for me, it's jealousy. I own that. I can't remember if it's jealousy or envy, but it's one of those. And I own that. You hear it, it's like, how you looking at all this and coming away with that? Now, in my quiet meditation, it will become a source of aspiration. But right now, as I experience the trigger and all the physiological chemicals rushing in my body, I'm going. But then when I get to calm down and settle and think about this conversation, my takeaway, so I can get to sleep and live another day, will be how can I use that as a source of aspiration? And then leave it there. I'm not going to get stayed here. because it's a reaction.
Mm.
But I did want to put it out because I was just, it's like, is it me? Put that bird out there. You know, is it me? And, you know, so I appreciate the feedback, and I also own that it is in fact me and my framework, and there's something I'm reacting to. I got to figure that part out, but I just put it out there. So no harm taken, and no need to ever apologize for something that comes to you authentically and naturally. You know, forget Sister Ann. Who is she anyway? Don't nobody like the way you talking either.
Well, I wouldn't say all of that there, but it is appreciated. The spirit of it. No, no, no. Anyway, I just want to say thank you, Sister Ann, for the graciousness in which you offered that. Thank you, Dr. Anna, for the humility and authenticity and honesty in appreciating your positionality and how that shows up in spaces. And awareness that also sort of quotes that as well. And this is what we do in community, right? This is what we do in community. Things happen, but how do we like come out with the honesty and say, hey, this is it, and I'm owning my part, but I'm sharing, this is my experience. And then the other person or the other party, what have you, is able to take that and massage that and just say their truth. And these things are going to grow and change as both of you and all of us meditate on this for the rest of the day, and then build community from there. So I want to appreciate these two sisters showing up in their realness and in their authenticity, and working on this together. I hope that offline you all continue conversing and building, whatever that looks like. You get to decide. But thank you for this moment and this restorative practice moment. I am not an expert at this. Let me be vulnerable. I just recognize, maybe it's my firstborn, Amada. I'm firstborn. So this is what we do all day. It's like try to make sure our siblings don't kill each other. Literally your entire job as Anada. So with that being said, I want to really appreciate the beautiful moment that you have role modeled for us in this space. And I hope that you continue this offline and build relationship offline. Thank you. With that, I'm going to go ahead and say thank you to the most important people in this space, which is all of you that have hung in there with us. Brother Benny and I swore to each other we will keep these conversations 1.5 hours, but because we are Africans, we have no idea what the hell we're talking about. So with that being said, I appreciate you hanging out with us till 3:51 p.m. We apologize for, I know we say we don't apologize here, but I think we should apologize for keeping people to almost 4 freaking o'clock. But I am most grateful to all of you for doing that. The offerings you shared was just amazing. Sister LaShawn, Sister Ann, Brother Eric, Sister Red Sky, Sister, I want to say this correctly, Jaribe, and just every single one of you. Thank you so much. The folks that have been tweeting, you have been sharing everything. And I want you to please go forth from here, continue talking about this, sharing this. Recording is recorded here. It's on YouTube as well. Share it. Keep talking about it, learning about it. Furthermore, there's been great work done about racial affinity group caucusing in the education space. So excuse me. So there's tons of resources there, and we are yet to explore it. And so in the health professional education space, so this is the first step in there. Write about it. Dr. Valdez's colleague that's about to do that for nursing. Can't wait for that to drop. All of us need to be writing and talking and broadcasting about this. But in summary of the conversations we have today, as we are writing and sharing and talking about this, we really massage a lot of nuance. That's why I love the brilliance in this room, right? We defined racial affinity groups and caucuses. We know that they are facilitated, emphasis on facilitated sessions about folks that share the same racial, ethnic identities and characteristics. And it also emphasizes praxis about their lived experiences. And praxis means we are incorporating three important variables. One being your theorizing, right, and lived experiences and what's happening and what's not happening. Secondly, is a critical, reflective, introspective lens. And thirdly is action that we are driving towards action. This group talked about the importance of being intentional. Maybe we don't want to require it so much, but we do want folks to be compensated for labor and for time. We want it to be optional and opt-in. We need it to be part of a larger institutional anti-racist effort. We should not be afraid to drink white tears without Kool-Aid, right? And understand that in the first place, they don't even really care, because ultimately any retaliation or backlash is rooted in the very system that caused the need for racial affinity groups. Like Sister Anne said, why do we still need it? This is not a flex, you know. This is not a flex. We did this in the 60s and the whatnot. 2023, y'all still having this. It's not a flex. It is reflective of the ongoing systemic oppression and violences and isms in our various institutions. And so therefore, we have to be clear about goal setting, the intentionality, where, what are we developing skills? Are we not just the coming together to protect our mental health and wellness and well-being, so we know we're not alone, that we're seen, we're not gaslit, we can mitigate and the anxieties. I'm very careful with this term imposter syndrome, because for us it's not it's a feeling and an experience that is intentionally crafted. So it's not this like, oh, you think you are but you're not. No. It was documented that we are inferior, right? It was codified in the very documents of this nation, the Constitution, 3/5, and the slave codes and the Black codes, etc. We are it is by intention, right? So we are the quote unquote imposter syndrome is very real. So I don't use that term because it's a very real experience that is by design in these predominantly white spaces that are inherently toxic. And so there's a need to cultivate these beautiful spaces, but we have to do it with intention, with certain goal setting, with, you know, and I love how a sister said, Sister Jaribe, hush harbors that are home, right? So we can do some body work and we can do our practice healing, but also strategize and organize to dismantling the realities of the isms that cause these band-aid temporary groups to be formed in the first place. So this was such a fantastic, this exceeded my expectations. I'm blown away. Share these videos, these recordings. We're going to be building upon many of what we have discussed today. As Brother Benny said, this is an action roundtable, not just an roundtable. For anyone that wants to work with us on many of the projects that are coming forth from these conversations, please reach out. We will share the link to the listserv so you can sign up and you can sign other people up too, people you know that should be here but can't make it. Go ahead and share it with them or put their information. We love all our people to come together and create that platform for us to action with intention. So thank you again for being here with us. We love you. We want you to go forth, love each other, build community and build power. Ubuntu. And as always, we're going to close out with some breathing and we do some body work. Okay, Brother Eric, you can do some your self-care practice with us together in community. You are welcome to drop off at any time now, but if you want to stay, we will do some breathing and some affirmation, and then, you know, close out with some music. And so we start with music, we close out with music. That's part of healing practice. I want you to go for it and do something joyful and playful and loving and great when you're out of here. I know Sister Nissy is just going to take some more Theraflu and roll over in bed and sleep some more, as she should. And but y'all go out and play with your pets, with your kids, with your partners, with somebody else's partner site. Don't do that. That's not good. That's not good for community. And all right, don't do that. Dr. Parr said it was okay. She didn't. She did not. And And so, but yeah, go out there and do good things for yourself, and be happy and be joyful, because that is revolutionary, and that gets us set to do the work ahead. So with that, let's go ahead and listen. Oh, and just so you know, I did put on the dashboard, as well as in our thread. We talked about this last time, right? We talked about the racial healing, racial trauma healing practices. So feel free to revisit our last recording. While we're going through this, I will, also put that in the jumbotron in the dashboard. But we talked about the 4 bodies, a holistic toolkit for coping with racial trauma. So I have put that in the dashboard. So please feel free to explore that as well. How we heal in the mental body, in the emotional body, in the physical body, and the spiritual body. What are the practices for that? Right. So that's all in the dashboard. So I want to encourage you to do that in between now and when we meet again. All right. So let's listen to this sister break it down for us as we practice some breathing and close out this space. Ashe, ashe, ashe. All right. Thank you. I hope that felt good for you. And go ahead and keep the conversation going. Don't forget to hashtag #AArt when you do. I love you. Love all of you so much. And I'm very grateful for you. Ubuntu. See you in 2 weeks.